Did you sign in?
Okay.
Pick a packet
And some chips.
and some water, some cookies.
Fortify yourself. It's going to be a 3-hour training. Can't have anyone starving.
Since Wisconsin, first moved here, it's like, oh, every time we get together, we gotta eat. Can't we just go do something? No, you gotta sit there and eat.
I mean, you burn so many calories. It's just being cold.
Uh-huh. All right, welcome everybody. Is that on? Okay, I'm using the mic, so when this is recorded, are we recording?
I am.
Oh.
Yeah.
Then they can hear me when they're recorded, if people want to watch this later on. So we thank you for coming out. Make sure you do the sign-in sheet and get some chips. And the bathrooms are back over there. For those that don't know me, my name is Marnie Manor. I'm the Pepin County Deputy Clerk, and I'm also the Town of Frankfort Clerk. And I will be assisted this evening by.
I'm Martha Black. I am the clerk of the town of Stockholm. I have been clerk there for about 3 years.
She's really interested in elections, which means that she retains some of the information that goes in. And then, of course, this is our county clerk, Audrey, the one that backs me up when I'm sending you all those nasty emails. That, oh, I need this stuff. Clerks in the room, raise your hands. All right. Clerks, please introduce yourself, because some of the clerks here have not seen you before.
I'll go, Alicia Kellstrom, Village of Stockholm Clerk. I am
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So hard because I kept being like, no, the town of Stockholm, not the village of Stockholm.
Angie Morgan, I'm the attorney. Melissa Weber, Tom Morby. County employee on the water bill clerk.
Okay, you sure?
Arkansas water bill clerk.
I think some registrations like that people live in the city of Arkansas. All right, so tonight we're gonna go over some election information. Most of it, the old timers know. Hopefully, the new people, it's gonna be a lot of stuff. We don't expect you to remember everything. We don't remember everything. And on that note, we don't know everything either. So if you ask us questions during elections that we don't know, we get a hold of the people at the state level. Sometimes they have to find somebody else for me to talk to, because that person doesn't know either. They specialize there. So there's a lot of stuff to know. All right, so I'm ready. Put her on. Where'd it go? Yep, that's good. So, what was I? Go to the next one. I talk a lot about going to the website for most of your information. This is, if you just type in WEC, WI, it should take you to the Wisconsin Election Commission website. And here at the bottom of the page, there's tabs at the top. One says election. If you go to the bottom of the page, it shows you right there. That's when our elections are. Just want a quick reference. There's also the election event calendar. I just wait a minute for. Did you get a packet? Did you sign in? Did you get any chips and water? And you guys have, handouts too in front of you. The calendar of events is also on this website. That's something I use both at the county level, and that would be handout number 1. Just the first page, because there's a lot of pages to it. first thing I do when a new one comes out is I go through and I start highlighting it. Got one here. I use one color for the county and use another one for the municipal clerks. But when you guys call and ask me when can we start doing absentees in our homes, this is where I'm getting it from. And it also cites the statutes, so that if you know have anybody giving you trouble, you go, it says right here in the statute that I cannot do it until this time.
Another fun thing on the calendar that I always go to is when various materials can be destroyed. Because if you're like me, there's this pile of election records from your municipality and at a certain point you're like, okay, how many of these do I actually need? And it's like, it looks like on, in 2024, just this month, we're destroying the poll list from February 15th, 2022. That's not very long. So if you clean out the closet, make room, reclaim your envelopes and paper clips, this is a great calendar to go to for those.
I find it helpful, especially at the county level, to put the date right on the, well, in this case, boxes of the election returns. And at home, it's more like a folder. The data can be destroyed, and some things, I just keep for posterity. But old bags, election bags full of voted ballots, no, not so much that. All right, so we have 2-year election cycle. That's not on here, so don't worry about that. So you notice this year, we only had elections in February and March or April.
Actually, I skipped February this year.
I know, it's even better. We had potential for February, and then we always have one in April. Then we get skip that one. Nothing in August or November. When I first became a clerk, I thought it was every year. It just took a while to get that rhythm. Next year is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So
so
we will have an August primary, and we'll have something going on in November. I'm not sure what that's like.
yes. When preparing the municipal budget for the town of Stockholm, it took me a little bit to catch on that in even numbered years, I needed to budget twice as much money or more for my election workers than I did in odd numbered years, because we're going to have at least twice as many elections every even numbered year. And so getting a really firm grip on that 2-year cycle also helps you know when it's time to appoint your poll workers.
That's right. And that's coming out this month. Everybody should have that on their agenda for this month, for the board to appoint their election workers. And if you, the clerk, are working at the polls, you need to be appointed too.
So if you want to be your fill-in chief election inspector, which for some small municipalities becomes a matter of necessity because you just can't get enough live bodies in the door on February 20th, you actually have to put yourself on the poll, on that list of appointed inspectors as a chief.
I just found that out this year.
Because you can always learn more by
But
going
doing
to the
this
website
so get yourself appointed
if necessary.
so that if you need to go ahead and, fill in for somebody. They'd rather that you did not, because the clerk's job at an election is to take care of the poll workers. Go get them more stuff, help them with, fixing the machine, whatever came up.
Subway.
Yeah.
Make runs to Subway, yes. But sometimes, like Martha said, it can't be helped. You're down to, begging somebody to stay all day and working yourself. So poll workers, we're going to appoint them. Yep, I've been through all that.
Hopefully everybody knows the training requirements. Obviously clerks and chief election inspectors have 6 hours every 2 years. So to make sure you are meeting that, you have to make notes, because who remembers which ones went to which training a year ago.
Yep, and we do keep lists of the sign-in sheets here. So if you're trying to figure out, I think we had one last March. not this year, the year before. If you're trying to see if somebody, one of your chief inspectors or you yourself was at that training, just call us and we'll scan it in and send it to you. That will count for you 3 hours. Otherwise, you go on the website, the election website, and you just start picking out trainings and see how long they last. Well, I watched this one for an hour, and you just write all that onto your sheet that you report to the state. The clerks have to report their training to the state. The chief inspectors report their training to their clerks. The clerks keep a record of that. And the regular poll workers, they're required to have training, but they never say how much, just should have training.
So if you have somebody like I did who's trying to quit because they're like, oh, I couldn't make the training. Especially this person was a chief that had already had 6 hours of training, and I was like, no, it's okay. If you can't make the training, I'm still not letting you quit.
Now, you've probably seen the messages, you clerks, about that the political parties could send you lists by the end of November that you would then have to pick from their list for your poll workers. I've, heard this theory. I haven't seen it in action yet.
Although, did you get the records request from the Republican Party? I just saw that in my email that they want a list of our poll workers' appointments.
Yeah,
Just to
sorry,
look at.
does not exist. And they said they're gonna keep asking them. All right, so if you get a list from like the Democratic or Republican Party, you pick somebody from that, then your chief inspector would then be affiliated. That's the only time they would check that box. As far as I know, none of us, our poll workers, have been picked from a party list, so we're always unaffiliated, and then you only have to have 2 people sign if we're both unaffiliated. That's why we put this one up here.
Are there any questions about this? Because I know that it took me about, 2 years to figure out what the heck anyone was talking about with these party lists. Because it literally hasn't come up, but could at any time in the state of Wisconsin, the way the law is written, it is assumed that the poll workers will be appointed by the political parties. And there's all these rules about how many come from which party based on who won the last general election. So whether Democrat or Republican became voted president or governor, depending on which cycle we're on. This is all very theoretical,
If it happens to you, give us a call. We'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
but it just
Did it
know
happen to
that,
you? Yeah.
Yeah, I have one person.
Oh,
Okay.
Good. And not chief inspector, just support.
it's a poll worker.
Okie dokie.
Well, you have to
And
make
that's the
sure
first time in 16 years.
that you select that person first before moving on to your unaffiliated people. And it's the whole
Is it
process.
someone you already had working as a poll worker?
No.
Oh, boy.
We knew, so, yeah.
Okay.
Because I've had them ask me before for the list of people I already have and what their
Are you
affiliations were so that they could, pick them. Like, I don't know what they're.
Yeah, like, I don't
Mine
ask
has
her.
affiliated. That's the only one I have.
Yeah.
So we don't have to give them their names at all.
If
I mean, we're telling them they're all unaffiliated because like all mine
Oh,
are.
but now the request she was talking about, they're asking for
Any appointed.
the names of our appointed election inspectors. And
so they
they're-
just want to know what list of election inspectors is the board going to vote on? And then if they wanted to appoint off of that list, it would slightly change how things would go down in terms of making sure those people were on the schedule and like choosing them first and making sure boxes are checked in the right place and.
I'm not gonna give them the list till after they're appointed. And then none of them are affiliated. and
Yeah.
That's that. And then for you new
Well, they
people, this
have-
thing is what's in the front of our ballot bag. That's the last thing to go into your ballot bag then before it gets sealed up. And it goes on the inside. We'll show you a little more about that later on.
Just to touch one more thing, it's past the deadline for the parties to submit.
Yeah,
their
that's
list.
November
That was in
30th.
November, so
But
if
this
they,
is a whole different
yeah, so they can't,
records
at
request.
this point, where anyone who hasn't received a party list is off the hook for this 2-year cycle. But be aware, times could change.
Indeed. All right. On our next slide. No. we don't have a next slide. But anyway, oh, I guess there is. Every 4 years, the election commission sends out postcards to all the people that have not voted for the last 4 years. Those postcards go out. People that want to continue to stay registered, they just sign them and they mail them back to the clerk. Then that clerk makes sure that the county clerk gets them so that we can go into the computer and go, yeah, keep them registered. People that don't sign the cards, then they get taken off the poll list. It's one of those weird laws that the state has, that's what they have to do every 4 years. So when someone comes in, they haven't voted for 5 years, they know dang well they're registered. You know what to tell them, I'm sorry, but you've fallen off the poll list and please go register.
Registered to vote again, because people will assume they're still registered to vote. They registered to vote, they voted for, you know, Bill Clinton or whatever, and surely they're still registered to vote, but it can become an issue.
All right, and then a little bit about absentees, the yearly versus the indefinitely confined. Go to our next one. Yeah, so we've got some people, they can request for the whole year. I want an absentee ballot for the entire year, so that'd be 4 elections. Now, once we get to the end of the year, they're done. Next year, they have to request again. We've got some people that are indefinitely confined for the next one.
Or it's down at the bottom of this one, I think. Let's go back.
Yeah, there we go. Indefinitely confined. What's that mean, Martha?
Oh, boy. So our indefinitely confined voters have certified through their signature on their application for absentee ballot or whatever, that they are indefinitely confined because of age, physical illness, or infirmity, and is disabled for an indefinite period. And this can be any number of things. Like, obviously, it's like I've got some blind voters, I've got some housebound voters. It's very obvious. Everyone in the community knows why this person would be indefinitely confined. Now, I have other people who are just going through, they're managing a health condition. Maybe they're having some bad days. They don't ever know when their bad days are going to be, and they've decided to be indefinitely confined because they can't. It gives them peace of mind that they'll still be able to vote even if something were to come up, and that can be completely invisible. So we assume that the voter is informed and that they have checked this box in good faith, because there is no way for a clerk to know why somebody's private health information, why they decided to check that box.
That being said, you can still check back with them every once in a while saying, do you still want to be on the indefinitely confined list, and not making them prove it or anything, just ask some people. A lot of people did it during COVID because they were confined then, and then they just never thought to take their name back off the list. It's okay to go back through going, you want this, you want this. Now, if they don't return a ballot, the indefinitely confined one, don't return an absentee ballot from like the April or the November one.
It might just be for the November one. It might just be for the general election.
All right, the big general election. Then at that point, they can be removed from your list once you have sent them a letter saying you didn't return a ballot. And there's a form letter on the Wisconsin website.
And it will basically ask, like, you failed to return a ballot for this election, you will lose your indefinitely confined status unless you mail this back saying that you want to stay. And so that allows people, everyone I've had who has been indefinitely confined, has returned every single ballot, February primary, anything. They'll return anything because they understand that keeps them on the list. Or they just appreciate all the work I went through sending them those ballots. And then some of those folks have taken themselves off when they resolve their health issues, and others are just still on, and they will remain on indefinitely until their voter registration becomes canceled through their death or moving or whatever.
Yes.
Where is that? Where do you find that letter that you can send them?
It's somewhere on the WEC website because I found it there before.
Yeah.
They reorganized their website, which makes everything a little bit more exciting to find.
Cool, but I called a bunch of them when it was over and explained kind of in-depthly defined that, and they, like, no, I didn't, I just thought we couldn't leave our house because of COVID, so.
Yeah,
Then
And a lot of people now can get their absentee ballot requests online, and they're the ones, checking all the
Checking it.
boxes, and sometimes they get a little check happy, and you're like, okay.
now the big thing, the thing that makes indefinitely confined so controversial, so to speak, makes us get so many record requests for our indefinitely confined list, is that the indefinitely confined voters do not have to show proof of identification. Now, for someone like my blind voter who is not driving, doesn't, is being cared for by the family, doesn't need to keep a form of identification necessarily up to date. This is removing a burden, for somebody. But then there was a lot of concern during COVID that people were, instead of submitting their IDs, they were checking this box because that was easier or something, and that those people maybe be less qualified. We have no idea, but it is fine to have a conversation. Obviously, except for the city, everybody else, the small little municipality, and has a reasonable number of voters on our list. And so if we do know, who it is, it's fine to have a conversation and just try to get in touch with those people and be like, how you doing? Do you want to stay on? Do you understand what's going on? And kind of get that cleaned up. Everyone else who has an absentee ballot request has to submit or have on file identification. When I became clerk in 2020, in March of 2020, I had no idea where all these identifications were on file. So I just got everyone to send them to me again. But like the system, if you ask for an absentee ballot online, if you have your driver's license, if you've submitted it once, it's like they've already submitted it. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but I have no idea where it is. And then I would reach out to those people and be like, send it to me again. Like, I don't know where you're. And then I found where the previous clerk had kept all those things. And I was like, oh, great, now I have lots of them. But we do want to make sure for everyone else that we have verified their photo ID before we issue them a ballot, just like we would at the polls.
And just like we do when they come to our office.
And just like we do when they
Even
come
if
to.
it's, your husband's like, may I see
Yes.
some ID?
Yes, definitely. Especially if it's your husband, that's fun. Do you know where your license is? I thought not.
Guys have any questions on? Yes.
So every single election, they have to fill out the absentee ballot, or is it every year, or how?
Yeah, so first, encourage everyone to do it online, because
Okay.
that's always much easier. If at all possible, be like, can you do it online? There's a box to check for which elections. There's also a box to check for the whole year. So, if somebody is going to be in Arizona until May, then they might just want an absentee for the April election, but they definitely don't want their ballot for November going to Arizona. So they have to kind of think about this. What address do they want their ballot sent to for which elections? Now, if they live out of state, they're gone to take care of their mother for the year, they might want the whole year, or they just want them sent to their house because they do.
Yeah. You could, have a folder that has your indefinitely confined people in there, so you can look through there and make sure they get their ballots, and then you would have one for the year, so that you can pull it out for each election, or maybe you've labeled it some way that you can go, okay, this is just for April, this is for the whole year, this is just for November, and they should mark it on there.
My question was, if you have somebody who gets an absentee ballot, goes through all of the process, fills it out, sends it in, you get it on time, and then 2 days before the election, they die. We even had one on the day of the election. Why can't you count that? They were alive, they did everything.
It's because of the distinction between voting absentee and early voting. So, are we there? Because I love
Just
talking about
go for it.
Go for it. Okay, so in Wisconsin, we do not have early voting. You can vote absentee in the clerk's office before the election. You can vote absentee, but the ballot is cast into the ballot box on election day. And only a US citizen 18 years of age or older can do that. And when you are legally dead, you are also legally not a US citizen. And you think about it. Right? So that's how I think about it. I don't know if that's exactly the language, but I think we can't vote. And so everything about the absentee ballot process mirrors what happened in the polling place on election day, because really in Wisconsin, we only have one way of voting. And the absentee process is just a way of stretching, kind of allowing that process to happen on election day, even if the voter themselves is not present.
So in another state, if they have early voting, then that ballot would be counted?
Yeah, so my understanding, I went to college in North Carolina, there was early voting in North Carolina, and they were tallying the votes. They were canvassing, that day's votes at the day that we cast them. I mean, I wasn't a poll worker then, so that was just my understanding, it might be different. But it is really, we count the votes on election day, and that's why if you die before election day, you're no longer deciding the future of our democracy, because somebody else's job now.
Although I have heard talk at the legislative level for our state that they're thinking about allowing absentee votes to be counted before election day.
What?
That would work out for cities like Milwaukee, because we had a huge amount of ballots in 2020. It took forever.
It was painful.
It was. I mean, people staying there till midnight. And they actually let us go home for a little while and come back again, because there was no way everybody's going to count all that. And they're thinking, places like that could probably use a hand. You won't be able to know what happened. It's a secret, but I don't know how that works if we're counting ballots in public after election. So they need to really think about
Yeah,
what
they
they're
need to really
doing.
think about that. Maybe just make it for first class cities, of which we have only one, Milwaukee.
There you go.
I think it's always great when you're reading the statutes and you're like, all of this is for this, and then for first class cities, and you're like, AKA Milwaukee. Creates this whole other law.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're done with that part. Leading up to the election, now we talked a little bit about the poll workers. You want to make sure that you get them scheduled ahead of time, that they know who's working. This is just a sample of mine. The numbers are wrong on there, so don't try calling them. And you notice I did a lot of cutting, pasting, so that, the times are wrong up there too. I try to stagger it so that not everybody's leaving at 2 o'clock. So the guy that came in at 1 can tell the people coming in at 2 o'clock, here's what's going on. We need to watch this. And then also that if Judy says, I can't work that day, and she calls Pat, and they work it out beforehand and then call me with a solution, that's even better. So, I get this out to them as soon as I can, and then towards the end of the year, it's, nothing's working right anyway, but at least we had a plan. So communicate with your workers, and you need to communicate with your clerks and say, I can't work that, or I can work, every single election, all the positions, and, I can do it.
I have a spreadsheet where I'm tracking my training hours for my election workers. I also have the master list of who's ever expressed an interest in being a poll worker, who's actually trained, who's retired, and then, any notes such as AM, because I have 3 folks now. I have a whole set who they'll only work the morning. They can't drive in the dark. And although it's dark when you have to get there in the spring, it's really hard. But anyways, if they've got some sort of note about, what they want to do, obviously making our poll workers happy is very important, because they can't quit. No, wait, I guess they could, but I won't let them.
Exactly.
And so, keeping track of that kind of information all in one central place is very helpful in any other, I have their addresses, so I can mail them their, oaths after they're appointed. I make sure and just go ahead and mail them an oath. They really love that because it's so official looking. And then, any other information I need to have about them, phone numbers.
All right, and then as you work with your poll workers, you also need to work with the county. We'll start sending you out all kind of emails, because, we love to communicate with our people. One of the things that comes out there's a lot of lists that come out. This one is what goes in your ballot bag, the big blue one that you get, and then I say check and make sure I gave you all this stuff. It's also handy for the poll workers who can look through and go, oh, we're supposed to have all this stuff here. Maybe the clerk left half of it, at home and forgot to bring a lot of it.
But this is the absentee, so that would actually go out. in that
No,
little
this
blue
is the
one.
absentee one that will come out with the red bag.
Yep.
The red bag. It won't be sealed at that time or have a little card in it, but usually I stuff all your absentee materials that I can into here, and I think the blue ballot bag.
Yeah, the blue ballot bag.
So those come together. The red bag, then we'll talk about what you're supposed to do with that, but then you would go through and make sure that I didn't get distracted in the middle of filling your bag and then went back to someplace else that was, not wrong. And also that's when you'll be getting stuff back from the previous elections that I don't need, or things that I've entered, like your voter registrations have been entered, and you'll get those back, so you can go ahead and file those in your handy dandy registration book. And then this,
Tell your next clerk where it is.
and then this would be the one that comes in the next bag when it's time to get you all your stuff for your election. The first bag that goes out is going to have the ballots. As soon as you get all those ballots, then you should be sending them off to your people that are registered for have absentee requests on file. What I do also is I go into the Wisconsin election website. It's a part you guys can't access. It's called WisVote. But I can then look and see all the people in your municipality that have a absentee ballot on request. You might not have that paperwork, but I'll give you that list, and you can go, oh, I didn't know this guy had something on file. And so look through that list too to make sure that you get everybody, because if the state gets kind of persnickety, they can tell who the ballots are going out to. They see this list and they can say, wait a minute, what about this guy? Why didn't he ever get one?
Yeah, so I think everybody's on the same page here. The city of Durand is its own WisVote provider, right? And everyone else relies on Marie for all of our WisVote, everything. So there's this whole, really, honestly, ingenious system of keeping the voters up to date, keeping the clerks up to date, keeping everybody on the same page, but it only works if we provide Marie with our absentee ballot logs, for example, showing like who have we gotten requested from, when did we send those ballots out, so that the voter can actually track through the website. Okay, I clicked the little box, then what happened? Oh, look, my ballot has been mailed. And then when they return it, then it's there as a public record, they can look it up. Okay, like I've got my ballot back. The clerk has received it, so they don't have to be calling the clerk to be like, did you receive my absentee ballot? Let's be honest, some of our voters are more tech savvy than others. But in theory, they could just look on the website and see that the clerk has received that ballot back if I put it on my log and emailed my log to Maureen, and Maureen put it on the website in WisVote.
So on the Wisconsin election website, there are little buttons off. I think they're under the clerk page, and one of them says my vote. And that's where the voters would go to either register to vote, to request an absentee ballot, or to check on the status of the ballot that they sent in or requested.
City clerks, make sure your address is up to date right away before things go crazy.
So when they fill that out online, then it comes to us in the mail?
Yeah, so when somebody submits a request for an absentee ballot online, you get an email
Oh,
with
okay.
all of their information in a very useful form. And if they submitted their ID online too, which they can upload a picture, then you get a printout of their ID. And it's really super easy and my favorite, because all the information is very legible. The first page will always be your information as clerk, and then the second page is the voters' information. And you want to just hit page 2 on all of it.
And that pretty much takes care of them, wondering if they're registered to vote, because they would not have gotten that far
Yeah, right.
unless they were registered to vote.
And you'll also automatically, if they register to vote through WisVote or through My Vote, then you will also automatically get their voter registration in your email as well. So hopefully your email is up to date with the WCC because there's a lot of important stuff that comes that way.
You betcha. You'll even get phone calls every once in a while when there's a big emergency.
Yeah.
You guys get that?
Well, and they'll test this is a test of the WEC whatever system to make sure that they could be like, okay, all clerks,
Like a
all
bat
clerks.
phone going.
Yeah. Every once in a while, if there's a court case or something and they put a hold on something, it can get really exciting.
Yep. So, see, we talked about that. We talked a little bit about the absentee ballot window. But I mean, when you have to mail things out, I think that's the next slide.
Yeah.
Or maybe sort of. So the type E notice tells everybody that there's going to be an election, basically, that you can get your absentee ballots from the clerk. It lists the clerks here. I always ask you guys, what times do you want me to put on here for when we can get a hold of you? Like the city of Durand, they're there, Monday through Friday.
8 to 4.
But
Wow.
there's no weekend hours.
Yeah.
Really? Come on.
I mean, come on. It's
Whereas, like,
easy.
Town of Frankfurt, I've got Monday through Saturday by appointment. So you come, but you gotta let me know, because I might be in my jammies. And then it will also tell you when the first day to vote in the clerk's office is, and the last day. So a lot of information on the type E notice. You guys are required by law to publish it, but we do it for you, and then you guys get charged a little bit of money. It's a little cheaper for all of us that way. And it's the same with the type B and the type D notices.
And it is when we're coming up to an election, especially, even number of years, we get a lot of absentee ballot requests. There is a very quick turnaround legally on when that first day that we can send out the ballots for, when we have a list, 12 people long or whatever, put it in your schedule, because you, I believe, have 24 hours to turn that around from the first day you may send out those ballots becomes the 24 hours in which you must send out all of those initial absentee ballots.
It's the same when you get a request. You don't just put it
Yeah.
in a do later pile. It needs to be done pretty much right away.
24 hours. And so we are, if you know there's gonna be something in your life during the absentee ballot window, make sure you have somebody to be a deputy or a chief election inspector who can take care of that for you, because you are really responsible for turning those ballots around, getting them out the door right away.
And then something I was just reading today concerns the presidential primary only ballots, where that's the only thing on the ballots for the presidential preference primary, which is in April. But by law, state law, that it's got to be done, I think it's 45 days ahead of that election. So that falls on February 15th, which is before this, February primary. So the state's saying that we're going to make 2 sets of ballots. A will just have the president's stuff on it. You got any military people and the overseas people, you've got to send it to them. And as soon as we get the other ballots done with the president and everything else on it, you got to send that to them. Really?
And that's specifically for your military
And overseas.
and overseas.
So if you have any of those, just a heads up. And you got some, don't you, Angie?
I have an overseas.
Yeah, I've got an overseas, it's kind of crazy, I mean, the thing with overseas voters is the last residence that somebody had in the USA, that is where they will stay registered to vote, as long as they, are a citizen and can vote. And they can only vote in the federals because they're not living in the state. It's different, I think, with military, I don't have any military.
At military. They just send anything.
Yeah, you send her everything. I know there's a absentee ballot request form that an overseas voter can send in that has the presidential preference that they can mark on there, on the request form. And so,
Pretty much blank.
yeah, and I have received one of those for a presidential election where there was no way she would have time to mail that from New Zealand, have it arrive at my office, and for me to turn around and mail her ballots back to New Zealand, and then her to turn around and mail them everything back. But she got me her presidential vote on her absentee ballot request form on election day. It was my crowning glory of the 2020 election. And so there's just some kind of special things to be aware of, different forms, different kind of rules around your overseas and military voters.
And you don't have to remember all this. It's in the election manuals. Go online and look those up. I used to print them out and give it to people that wanted them, but they go out of print or go
Yeah,
stale so fast. that
They're changing the laws so often.
They keep
these days.
changing things on me. So next, this is more for poll workers where it's, it's proof of residence versus proof of identification. Keep going, Audrey. Yeah, okay. Guys got questions over there?
There's a lot of comments.
Clarifying something.
Clarifying.
Okay.
Beautiful. I mean, I know as soon as I became clerk, I was told, and it has always been true, that all your other clerks, I got your back. So definitely, we are all in this together.
Now, if you guys come up with a doozy of a question, send it to the clerk's office. Because we will figure out what that answer is, and then we'll send it out to everybody so that we all know that. And I like to have things in writing because my memory's like,
Oh, I know. It's much better to have it in the email folder, properly filed with a subject line that I can remember how to search for it. That's what I really need.
all right, so a little bit, proof of residence is what you need when somebody's registering to vote. They're not on the books yet. They gotta come in, they gotta prove that they live somewhere for the last 28 days. Only certain documents will do. At the polling place, you get stuff like this, and you get picture cards that show what proof of IDs are acceptable. Basically, something like a utility bill, a bank statement, your check from wherever you're getting paid from.
Your real estate bill, tax bill, or receipt.
Yes.
What do you do if somebody is in like the witness protection or they do not want their address known, they're
Yeah.
hiding for some reason?
There are confidential voters.
Yeah, you can have a confidential
I
voter.
think the city of Durand had one.
Nope.
No,
Not since
she-
I've been there.
I mean, town.
She came in,
Town.
she came in and she thought she was in the right place and we were scurrying around and she wasn't right there. so.
They have to register ahead of time, I believe, and then they get a special number from the state. That's what goes in the poll book, is just that number.
Yeah,
And then
and then the state can kind of keep track of those.
So no name, no address, nothing.
I just seen it once. I think it was just a
Was a
number.
name and a number or just a number?
I don't remember. Remember, Audrey?
Yeah.
Okay. We don't know.
If you have somebody who needs to be a confidential voter, and I believe they, first of all, look it up, because who's gonna remember the exact details? You can just be like, excuse me, well, I turned to my election day manual or my election administration
I
manual.
would call the state.
Call the state, figure out what you need, and then, yeah, you wanna make sure you do it right.
Yeah.
So they just can't come in the day of the election and try to do this?
Think that that would work to come in
It
on
has to
election
be
day.
some
If they
preliminary.
want
Yeah.
confidential, then I think even election day, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
How
think,
would they have a number from the state?
exactly, I think that would be. the kind of
Because they're right
situation.
there, you gotta announce who you are.
Yeah, and all of that is a
Yeah.
public record, the poll book, the supplemental poll book, the voter registration, like this is very much public record, so.
Exactly.
If they are hiding from someone, that's not a good move.
And then the proof of identification is what we use after we've registered. We're coming up to the people with the poll book with our ID, stating our name, hopefully waiting a little bit so they find the name on the page, stating our address. And then the poll workers are supposed to look at my picture,
Two of them.
two of them. Do you both agree that that looks like me? Kinda, sorta. No, yes. Chief inspector breaks a tie.
We just want it to bear a reasonable resemblance.
We're not looking at the address because that's not what this is for, proof of ID, and we're looking to see how long it's been expired. It can be expired back to the last November election, but date that was, I think it's on there.
Yeah, so for this year, there was no November election.
So 11
it's always gonna be the even
November
number.
8th of 2022 can be expired back to then.
You know, and when people. Yeah, it helps if you just kind of think through, like, okay, so what are the qualifications to vote, to register to vote? You have to be, you have to be a citizen, you have to reside in the municipality in which you are voting. You have to be 18 years of age, and so we're really, that proof of residence is just to establish, that they actually live where they say they live, so they can vote for those people who are on that ballot. And then the proof of identification, I got my driver's license renewed, when I was renting this one house for 1 year. It was my birthday, and boy, I got that address on my license and then moved the next year and spent, the next 7 years with the wrong address on my license. And that's perfectly, I changed my address with the DMV and they do not send you a new license. So you don't look at the address, you're just looking for the name, picture, I guess.
And
that's
some
it.
IDs won't, like a passport, I don't think your address is in there.
No, I don't think so,
No.
yeah. no.
It's your picture.
So for the residents, what if they have like a summer house? But they're technically there for 28 days? How does that work?
If people have two residences, then you pick the place they live the most. So
What
if
if
they,
it's 6 months and 6 months?
then they gotta pick one
I
and
mean,
stick with
they're
it.
really, this has come up for me, kind of Stockholm, similar situations where people are like, well, we are keeping, they did live here, for a year and now they're kind of back and forth, and like, if they say that they're there for less full time and that's where they're keeping their kind of main address, then that's fine, they can be registered to vote there, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know any different.
Yeah, but
in terms of
computers are
how
getting a little
long
bit
they're
better, so if they voted in the town of
Yes,
Stockholm
that's-
and, in Miami, Florida, they're gonna figure
Yeah,
that
that
out.
would definitely be a real problem. So you do kind of want to ensure, like, be like, okay, if you're registered to vote here, you're not gonna be registered to vote anywhere else.
Okay.
And on the registration form, they're pretty much swearing when they sign it that what they told me is true, and we go from there, that's all you can do.
Okay.
So, voting machines,
So yeah, that is an interesting with the real estate tax bill. It's like, well, I have a lot of people who own real estate in the town of Stockholm who wouldn't be registered, who couldn't register to vote there.
so when we get our voting machines, well, we got our voting machines, we're supposed to do a pre-lat test and a public test. The pre-lat is when you get your little devices through the mail, or we give them to you. You're supposed to plug them into your machine as soon as you can. Not all of us do that.
But we should,
We
the
should.
day we receive them, we should go put
Because
them in.
We're
and check
looking
them.
for mistakes, which Martha always finds, she finds late.
Yeah, but I never do my test on time, I know, it's so embarrassing.
I make a spreadsheet for doing my tests, put down all the names that are on the ballots. And sometimes there are many, many. And then just go through the machine and test it a couple of times. You're looking at all these names on there. Are they spelled correctly? Because I'm the one giving them that information on how to do the spelling. Which doesn't always work out.
Always, or you also wanna check, that the language on a referendum is exactly correct. I mean, I think there was 2 does in a row, like, it's just like often a very small typo, but if you can catch that stuff.
Or the schools that it's supposed to be a vote for 2, but there's only a vote for 1, or a vote for 3, or the villages, you guys,
That
vote for 16, or whatever it is.
Just 3, and that's only every other year.
And check that out, and then if there's a problem, then you get a hold of us and let us know, because then there's plenty of time for them to reprogram it and get us another cartridge. So that's what that's all about. The public test, which is for the public, so we're gonna put a notice out. Newspaper works great if that's where you're usually doing it, is when the machines first came out, there's a lot of people going, I don't think so.
don't trust those bill boxes.
So we had to show them that if, we voted for something 100 times in the public test, and when we hit the results, it was there 100 times. It was all the ones that we voted for. Again, with the spreadsheet, I just have 10, I go across and make little marks, and it's a good time then to, you're not supposed to let the poll workers do it. You're supposed to, be paying attention, but they can do that stuff while I'm setting up, and then they can learn what's on there and how many times it takes that you have to hit print. The presidential preference one is gonna be a humdinger.
Yeah, in
Imagine.
terms of printing the voter verified paper audit trail, that little paper ballot, it will only, it shows so much in the screen, and then you print again, and it shows you the rest, and then maybe you print again, and it shows you the rest, and then you cast your
They
ballot.
took some of those bars out of there. They could
Oh
fit
my
more
God.
stuff in there.
And the barcode that we can't use.
So this is to let put the public's mind at ease, that, it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's not connected to the internet. Make sure you tell people that. No way does it ever connect to the internet. It doesn't know how. And the ballots are paper ballots. They're all right there. And then the little cartridge is the backup in case something goes horribly wrong with the paper ballots. And, eats half of them, and we have a recount or something. And we need to reprint those.
But I'll just make sure that I say the pre-lat is pre is just pre, and then it's a logic and accuracy test. And I actually also often,
Really? Is that what it stands for?
logic and accuracy.
I thought they just made it up.
And it's also a great time, when you get your paper ballots from the county, it is also very helpful to read through those and make sure all the names are correct, and
Because the person putting those names on this ballot doesn't always spell so well.
make these like little human errors. And
You look at it 100 times, it looks right, and then Martha goes, hey,
by the way, did you know?
it's always Martha.
It's not always me, I'm sure it's somebody else sometimes. This is my punishment for educational errors nowadays, election training. But you do want to, just take some time to make sure you're getting familiar with it all. And I always use the accessible voting equipment at some point during my pre-lat or my public test. It is a wonderful time to become more familiar with your accessible voting equipment. That's the little video controller looking thing in the headphones. And if I have my chiefs assisting me, I will have them use that, so that if we have a blind voter come in, which is a real possibility in the town of Stockholm, I want to make sure everyone feels very comfortable, because there's nothing worse than the poll workers feeling like they're not well enough trained and they're really flustered, and then they're not able to effectively assist or feel confident helping somebody with that equipment.
And if your poll workers are there while you're doing the public test and they get more familiar with what's going on with that particular ballot, they can better assist people going, I've got a problem. And they, you try to get them to explain to you. And half the time you're gonna go, oh yeah, I did that too. You need to push
Yeah,
the button.
it's like, okay, well, you're probably, you just want to vote president, but first there's a million other things on the ballot. So if you go to the tabs on the top, you can touch the touch screen to skip all those others. And yes, it will tell you there's an error and you've undervoted every single other race. That's okay. And it's like having that, it's really hard to do it blind if you haven't even seen the ballot.
And then remember on the 18th, they're supposedly gonna fix our machines so that when someone puts in a write-in, we'll know who it is.
Yay.
Without their glib, we'll just unroll it and look for it. It's like,
I know, I literally, oh my gosh, when the
that's what they told us.
Command Central was like, oh, it's okay. This is how it's like supposed to be. If you have a write-in, a registered write-in, and you need to go find those names, it's really easy because they're all in bold. And I was like, there is nothing about unrolling that spool of ballots that is really easy.
So hopefully this does something for us. Let's see, but get them in, make sure either to City Hall or Pepin Village Municipal Building. Like by 8 o'clock on the 18th.
Yes, we all got an email about that.
All right, polling place security. Oh, it's the checklist. That's okay. That's part of it. So setting up the polling place is important because we got to make sure that we have a proper flow through, that our ballots are secure. When you're sitting there handing out ballots, the ballots are behind you. They're not sitting on a table. They're not pre-initialed. For like people doing that, you initial them as you need them for people that are going to vote on paper. I know the city of Durand is, but they should still be there in case the inspector comes through. Okay.
Don't encourage it.
Everyone has, everyone has a right to the ballot, and I also have a voter, it's come up before, who is, I don't know if he's dyslexic or, it takes him a while to vote, and his compromise that the easiest for him is to vote on paper, so that he doesn't feel like there's, somebody can come in and want the machine. And so you never know why somebody will want to vote on paper, but obviously Americans with disabilities have a lot of rights in our country, including really strong voting rights. And so we want to make sure everything we're doing is as accessible as it should be, which is extremely accessible to people to vote in any way they prefer.
So the polling place checklist, I send along to the clerks. Remember to bring their pens and their tape and their letter
You have a
openers.
much more legible one in your handout.
Yeah, it's in the handout also. I scan this in. I don't know why it looks like that, but election inspector should also be looking at it going, hey, we never had this, or it would be great if we could have this clerk. My election inspectors wanted a microwave, which is not on this list.
Yeah.
They did get one, yes.
Literally had an election inspector go down and be like, we don't have the, oh gosh, what was it? The EL something or other, that it was for application of new Wisconsin residents for presidential ballot. That's the EL 141. And I was like, you're right. We don't have the EL 141. If you get somebody who walks in, they have not been a resident for 28 days, but they do want to still vote for president, I will print that and get it to you.
All right, I'll try to make sure you guys have that.
I think you did, we had one, she called ahead of time.
Okay, it's nice when they warn you.
Yeah.
ahead of time. It's so great.
I just moved from Alaska, I'm not here long enough, but I wasn't presidential.
Great. All right, so this is all leading up to the election. Anybody got anything to say? Nope. Okay, moving on. You okay, Audrey?
Don't forget the flag.
Yeah, flags importante. All right.
Yeah.
Moving to So, election day procedures. First thing we do when we come in is we make sure that, well, I turned on the heat in the town hall. And it's so groovy.
Turned on
I don't know if you know the Frankfurt Town Hall, I think it's out
Okay.
by itself, got no running water, got no toilet. I feel really bad for my poll workers in February. We have a porta potty. Outside. So get there, make sure everybody comes on time, because that's kind of nerve wracking for the clerk if someone rolls in 2 minutes before the polls open.
Yeah, and I mean, it is not required that the clerk be there to open the polls, but it is definitely the tradition of this, as far as I can tell around here, because, you know, the clerk is really, we're there to support our workers. We are, the more confidence inspiring you can be, the more smoothly things will go, in my experience.
And in my case, I don't bring the ballots to the polling place until that morning, because
Yeah.
like I said, it sits out on its own. Anybody could get in there, mess around with the ballots,
Yeah,
or my absentee ballots that I haven't brought there yet. So, and then that's one of the first things we do before we open the polls. I look inside of my ballot boxes to make sure that there's nothing in
oh
there.
no, somebody stuffed the ballot box. Oh, Marie, what are you?
Open them up, look in. If you've got the big wooden ones like I do, I've found mice in there before. It's better to take them out before the voting.
Yeah, you definitely don't want mice in the ballot.
And then lock it. I've gone half a day before with going, oh, forgot to put locks on those ballot boxes.
Yeah, and when I open the polls, when verifying the zero count on the machine, which we all do, it prints the zero report before the election. I have to have my poll workers look at the ballot box and agree there are no ballots in, and then we lock it. And then if someday we'll get this right on the first time, we seal the ballot box when we're putting all the seals on at the beginning of the day, and that should not be a seal on the lock that you can put the key in and then pop that seal right off. It should be a seal on the actual ring of the ballot box.
We just
One
lock
of these
ours.
days.
Yeah, seals are important. We've got them all over our voting machines, except where the printer is, because we need to open that up and all of us sign, making sure that, yes, it does say 000.
Yeah.
We're good to go.
Now, it would be a real exceptional circumstance where somebody would unroll the entire paper roll and check to make sure there were signatures on the zero report. But, you know, you're assigning because I feel like it's part of the integrity of the election, that everybody is like, we did verify, we did look at this, we did make sure at the beginning when we opened the polls, there was 0 votes on all of these.
And I have seen them before when we've done the dreaded recounts.
Okay.
Because then you unroll all the tapes, you cut them into ballots, and then go from there. And you do get to the very first one and you go, oh, look, they signed it. And it said 0.
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, if your numbers are off and it's because you don't have 0 on your 0 report, because somebody did the public test on the actual election or something, that would really be important to know right away.
Yeah. The old machines are a little harder that way, where you were actually voting during your public test.
Yeah,
The new machines, you can just vote as many times as you want after you just zero it out.
you can 0 it out.
Start over again.
Yep.
It's the same thing, but when voters come in and they see everything's locked and you've got your seals up and your paperwork all nice and neat, then it gives them a little more confidence that we might know what we're doing. So we like to give that illusion.
I will also say we all got a manual from Man Central on how to do our pre-lat and our public test and open the polls. And I feel like doing, let's just pretend, the pre-lat right away when I get the mission to stick. And then after that, the public test with all of my perfect days of notice, no more than 10 days before and no less than 24 hours before the election or whatever it is.
Some kind of law.
You know, it does give you a chance to become more familiar with how to load the election data in the machine, how to zero it out, how to kind of use that tech card, you know, and so that is helpful, because then by the time you get to election day morning, you at least, having done it, this will be like the 3rd time, will feel very confident, whereas everyone else will be like, I don't know, what button do I press?
Yep. And then what to do if you're in the wrong party or the wrong school district, or it's in that book, but there's also a phone number and they are on standby.
They are, and they will help. That's why we pay them the big bucks.
All right, so we're all set up, ready to go. We open the polls. You can have the chief inspector make the announcement, polls are open. There can be people in there before that, especially town of Frankfurt, February. I'm not gonna make them stand out on the deck. They can come in, but they gotta stay over there and be quiet.
And not try and engage my frantic coworkers in conversation while they're doing their job.
And then, not say, I gotta be at work in 5 minutes. Sorry, we're opening the polls at.
At 7 AM.
But yeah, they can be in there. They just can't vote yet.
And
That would then be early voting.
and we don't have early voting in the state of Wisconsin.
Unless, of course, you forgot to set the time on your machine. then-
Yes, which then that's the other thing that your pre-let and your public test gives you a chance to do is reset the time on your machine if you've changed the clock since the last election. And if you somehow manage, you have a place to verify that when you turn on the machine, but if you somehow manage to have the machine set to the wrong time, because, in November, it's right after the time changes when we have our November election. You just want to make sure you say that nice and big on your inspector statement. If you are opening the polls at something other than 7 AM and closing them at a time that's printed on all your reports,
Yeah, it's pretty
and
easy to see
something
on
other
there.
than 8 PM, then you really want to make sure you have some clear documentation of why that is.
Because
When's the latest you can do the public test?
I believe it is the Monday night before the Tuesday election, because
So we can do it Monday night, right?
yes, I have done it
You
before.
can notice you have to notice the meeting
Right.
in advance, but you can do it the night before. And let's be honest, there have been some elections in which, setup and the public test went hand in hand.
Yeah, and I've done it myself, just because I was gonna take everything down to the Frankfurt Town Hall, turn the heat on, do the public test that night, the night before. Machine doesn't work really well when it's 5 degrees out, but, just make do. But yeah, that's perfectly legitimate, but it has to be noticed.
And if you do that, I really, really strongly, very strongly recommend that you do your pre-let as soon as possible, because it will be very too late to fix any problems by the night before the election.
That's typically what I do, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah, do the pre-lat early,
Yeah.
you can do the other one later. Make sure the paperwork, she mentioned the inspector statement. Things go wrong, please write them down. Wrong time on the voting machine,
Any other issues?
voter walked away. Halfway through the ballot, we had to cancel it, so your number's gonna be off. That'll be a way to tell the board of canvas what happened, why your numbers are different. But, sometimes I get stuff on there that's just like way too much. I didn't really need to know that, but I'd rather have all kind of miscellaneous than to have nothing and you see there's been a big problem, but you don't know what happened.
Yeah, so keeping your inspector statement is there so that it's a tool to use to put together after the fact what happened on this election. If there is no issues, right? No issues. If there was kind of anything interesting, we forgot to put the seal on the ballot box until 10 o'clock in the morning. You can write that down just in case it turned out the ballot box was stuffed with ballots because the Russians infiltrated without us noticing. Well, we didn't have a seal on there until 10 AM. Any kind of thing that you're noticing that is pertinent to the election and is pertinent to how the votes will be counted, is just get it written down.
All right. Sorry, next slide. Getting ahead of myself here.
Probably the inspector statement, which we've been talking about.
All right.
And then we
inspector.
can also just talk real quick about the working time. So there's the signatures, everyone who works the election should be signing the inspector statement, and the chiefs have some room to sign it down below. And then you put in the times, because at the board of canvas, they will actually check that and they will verify that there were no less than 3 poll workers And one of them was a chief inspector for every hour between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m.
And sometimes you guys get a little creative and stick somebody in there for 15 or 20 minutes.
To fill in
then-
a shift between people.
I've had to draw timelines before and then just start, putting points on this line to see if there actually was somebody at all times. Sometimes you give me the wrong inspector statement, I believe. You got one completely filled out and then one that you only kind of did. By law, there only has to be one there. I just give you guys two so you don't have to make a copy. Not all of us have this size of copier at home. If you do and you want to just make a copy of this one, that's great, but make sure it's filled out correctly. Everybody on the front, you've got your seals on the back. Both from the morning when the election inspector checked it, in the evening, you've got the ones at the top that you put on, the clerk put on there. And then in the front, we've had some problems with, it says number of absentee ballots counted. So everybody gets that right. So you had 10 absentee ballots counted. And then you'll tell me number of votes cast on paper and you'll have like one.
And you're like, how could those absentee ballots not have been cast on paper? Because they are absolutely,
And some of you guys are dividing absentee ballots from the paper ballots. They're all paper ballots. So just tell me how many paper ballots you had, because that gets added to the number of the voting machine. And then that has to magically not be more than the number of voters, is what we're checking there.
and it's, I mean, one of the reasons why we kind of have the big picture on why there is kind of these keeping track of absentee voters versus keeping track of just paper ballots in general, is that the absentee voters didn't sign the poll book. They signed their absentee ballot certificate, their envelope. And so the envelope then also becomes part of the record, because when we have an absentee voter, everything that happens on election day, in terms of you walk up, you state your name and address out loud, you show your ID, you sign the poll book. All of those steps occur, they just don't kind of occur sequentially at that time. So it's like when we process an absentee ballot, we read their name and address out loud from the envelope. That is like the voter stating their name and address. We look that they signed their envelope. That's like signing the poll book. That signature will then go into the records, just like the signatures on the poll book do. The witness is there to verify that they really did vote that ballot and put it in the envelope, that it was the voter who cast their ballot on election day. Well, that's kind of one of the things the poll workers are doing, is making sure that it is the voters casting one vote per citizen. So it all comes together.
One thing that I have seen in the inspector's statement, it's every once in a while, and it happened in the last election too, I got the name and the number of the voter that voted on paper. That is not an incident. Voting on paper is quite legitimate. You could do that. And then if I had 12 absentee ballots and then one paper ballot that was signed by the two election workers,
It's no longer.
it's not a secret. Everybody knows that. And it's not an incident. So don't write down. You can keep track of your paper ballots by tally marks so that you can reconcile during the day.
Yeah,
We got 30 votes in there. We've got 50 votes on the machine. We should have 80 voters. Yes, we're at voter number 80, so we're good.
Yeah, so it's perfectly fine to keep track of how many paper ballots have you issued, how many paper ballots have you processed, whatever, how many ballots are in the ballot box, whatever you want to kind of do to keep track of that, but you should not be attaching any names, because we want to maintain the privacy of the voters. So that means don't write paper in the poll book, because the poll book is a public record.
Right. Now, I know you guys use that to communicate with me, which is fine, like, Mary died, new address, that sort of thing, but, just keep that to that level, because when we get record requests on your behalf, because we've got all that stuff, it is for poll books, and it is for, inspector statements, and it is for the absentee ballot logs. They want to see all of that stuff. We've got it scanned in, so off it goes.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's definitely one way to beat the boredom of a slow election day in my town is to go through the poll book and talk about who has moved and who has died and who has a new name. And, you know, make little notes about that, but you obviously want to keep your comments very civil, what you're writing down in the poll book about where they've gone and why.
Mhm.
So you want a post-it note saying deceased?
You can do that too, that's
Yeah,
fine.
that's, yeah, if you,
So you.
if you have Post-it notes in your,
Yeah,
yeah, it's just for WISPA, it's just
Or
sort
you
of
can
to
make
kind
a
of,
separate note and say it on this page, but post-it notes work great too, just make sure that you're sure.
yeah, I mean, it will kind of, it won't necessarily, you know, I also have my poll workers go through and be like, we flagged this person last year, and it's like, well, you know, Maureen couldn't verify your comment, then she probably wouldn't just yank them because you said so.
And then it will be caught because all those records go, you know, death records go to the state, and then at some point, the election commission gets them, and then they start sending me notices of here, you know, like, these are people that are deceased, are they your people? And I'll look, and if they got the same address and name and birth date, I'm thinking, it's probably them.
We have a couple that just take long for a death notice to show up in this vote. I've had that happen where they'll mark it on there and I'll see it for months and it takes a long time for something. It don't, I mean, it's good, but every once in a while,
Yeah,
I
you
don't know,
just
the
like,
family just doesn't get their information together quickly enough that
I-
it takes a while to
yeah.
come through on the state level, but I've had it happen once or twice. I'm like, "We've been on for like over 6 months." I
Yeah.
Okay,
You know,
it's pretty.
But if you know for
it's
sure,
good.
you too can go in there
I
and
do,
go.
I mark, as I know, I'm marking. Took a long time for the one.
Okay, poll books.
just real quick before we run off from the inspector statement, I do want to say, the first thing I ever got dinged on in a municipal campus was not writing the seal number for the seal that's sealing the election data on the back of the inspector statement, because the municipal clerk provides the following. And it's the voting machine serial number, and it's the election data door tamper evidence seal. Because you should have sealed it as soon as you stuck it in there to pre-lat it. And it will, and sealed it shall remain. Because that is the one and only way to get data in and out of our machines, is the USB stick that we put in that, under that door.
Although when the election's done, do take it
Yes,
out.
and then you have to remember, oh gosh, how many times have I put my machine all the way back in its case and then said to myself, wait, I didn't take the USB stick out. Unpack the whole thing again. Once you've gotten that number written down, at the beginning of the election, your chief inspector is verifying it, signing it. At the end, after the polls closed, your chief inspector at that point is writing down, making sure it's the same seal number, signing it, and there's this whole big place where you get to write an essay. If for some reason those numbers do not match, because that data door, there's no reason why it should ever be opened once it is in there.
I could see a little kid getting out of hand.
Well,
Snapping that
exactly,
off,
right.
but then that should be written in there, so
Or,
and
you know,
so's
just-
kid.
Well, or like mishandling while trying to set the thing up, because that seal is on there from the very beginning. Yeah, I know, right? I haven't got a lot of yelling at. Although it was my children who were the very first to realize that the write-in votes weren't showing up on the reports tape, because I was like, here, you can help me do my pre-lat. And they were like, oh, can I write myself in? And I was like, and then they wanted the tapes, and I was like, oh, you're not on the tapes. Anyway.
Well, you have got that absentee envelope.
Ding.
Yes, we go to assisted living and they
Great.
vote absentee.
Yep.
But on those envelopes, sometimes there's a place for somebody from the facility to sign verifying that those people are residents, and sometimes there isn't.
Oh, we'll look at that in just a minute, because you can tell these are brand spanking new here. So, the latest and greatest.
Is that going to be on the new one?
Not that
They're gonna have to
it's
do
so.
2 year.
Yeah, we always have chief inspector and another poll worker that go there and we always
Yeah.
sign them. But there used to be a place on the bottom for the facility to verify that they are residents because we don't ask them for
Yep.
an
And
ID,
I-
you know, we ask them their name when, their address when we fill it in, but
Yeah.
We can
and I-
certainly look that up and see if there's other paperwork involved.
But as far as the actual, absentee ballot certificate envelope, the WEC just went through a whole process to make sure this had exactly what the legislature says it should and nothing more, nothing.
And if you guys dig that out, these are all bad ones. They were printed wrong. So if you want to look at them and see what it was exactly that
They printed them wrong.
they printed
they're
wrong,
in your-
we got like 1,500. of
They're in
them.
your
We gotta
package, number
Oh,
14.
Nothing.
Yeah,
And that's nothing, we're just we're small potatoes, but if you look at it, look at the very
anyone
bottom.
can find, I'd like offer a $200 prize to the person who hasn't already been through this training, but actually can catch what the error is, because it is that hard.
That used to be when we had absentee ballot certificates and they'd say 12 days or 28 days, and we'd cross them out, and we'd write stuff on, and I was thinking, well, these maybe we can white out, the state's like, no, it's gotta be exact what we said, no more monkeying around with them.
Yeah, the WEC has gotten its wrist slapped in so many lawsuits. They are being very, very.
So for those of you that give up, at the
Legislature-
very, very bottom, it says zip code. It cannot say zip code.
The zip code is not required by statute. Thus, the envelope cannot.
These are bad envelopes.
Oh my God.
What if they accidentally erased though?
What's
That's
that?
really-
If they- if
Like,
they-
it's a habit for me to put a zip code.
Oh, yeah,
What
they
if
can write
do
it. Oh, everybody writes it.
They can put it in there, it's just the envelope can't say
But
that.
we can't
Oh my
require
God.
it because our legislature has not, legislated in the statutes that zip code is
So the guy that
required.
did this for us,
Oh,
Bear Graphics, he thought that the state,
Here's like number,
had
tree
missed
name,
something, and
city,
they were gonna
state.
tell him later to go ahead and put the zip code in, so he just went ahead and did that.
No,
He had a
no,
whole
it's
lot
not.
of replays.
Yeah,
So all of you that have one of those, go ahead and write on it, so they don't get out in our system, just make an X
They're
on
not-
it or something, so you don't use it accidentally later.
watch out for this.
I've got big boxes in the back that I just cut them all in half, so they don't get into the system from
Fire
the dump.
starter, okay, fire starter.
So, yeah, that was that, we're like, oh, really? Instead, they used to not really care, I mean, in 2020, we were printing our own on, regular envelopes, because that's all we could
Oh.
do, everybody was out of them.
Yeah, it was, yes, and then that was not quite enough.
Yeah. All right, so poll books,
And you guys fill this out for your
so the,
absentee people?
I do.
Okay. I-
some municipalities will fill the top out for the people they're sending it to. The City of Duran actually prints labels, which we could do for you, but then we'd have to do all the absentee ballots.
Yeah,
We're not
that's
doing
really
it.
good.
I
So
fill
you
it,
get like 4 layer, you have to put their address in like 4 spots.
Yeah.
That's how you got labels are the envelopes go out and then this and go on the back for when they return it. I'm like, there's 3 of them, so I'm like, that's easy to print them.
I write it down for them just so everything's in there correctly. And then when they come back, I recognize right away that, hey, that was one that I sent out. That's my handwriting right there. And then it's a little easier for me to pick out that other stuff is or is not there.
Well, and then I also can verify that it's legible, so that.
And then you can
forward
actually read it, yeah.
Well, I think it's
That Martha can actually read it.
Yeah.
Well, I won't be the one.
There is a place at the very top to check for in-person absentee voters, show valid, ID or voter exempt or from or met the, photo ID requirement.
So in-person absentee, that's just for if they come to your office?
Yeah,
So then what if you send them in the mail?
Yeah,
then you check the second box.
Oh,
only if you got their ID. Now, if you didn't get their ID, then I would, I put little sticky notes on there going, see if there's ID in there, and if not, we're
Yeah, they have
rejecting it.
to send the ID back.
There's a different envelope for-
But usually at that point,
Yeah.
they're registered to vote and you hopefully have some.
because before we just used to do our initial.
Yeah,
if we check their ID.
exactly,
Right,
that's the same thing. Yep. It's actually, it says you initial here, so it is actually having you initial in that itty bitty little box. My initials don't fit.
These are good, so I'm not handing them out to people. This is the outside, so it looks completely different now too.
Nice and bright. Which I got something in the mail from the postal service verifying that they had the correct address or something, contact information
Yeah.
for the.
I got that too.
I was like, hey, this is like encouraging that they're really putting the effort into everybody to get it together, because I felt like in 2020, it would have been
Picture
great. Have that level of details.
Alright, and so, and then these are, you know, highlighted, so you can tell at a glance, like, oh wait, there's supposed to be something there, or there's supposed to be something there. If they vote in your office, you go ahead and fill that part out.
Yeah,
Alright,
Lots of improvements.
yeah, I think I hope it's gonna be easier
Like
for,
the highlighted, I always highlighted it for them.
oh, yeah. And I might still keep adding little, check boxes and extra exclamation points, make sure they see where to go.
yeah. Any questions about the absentee certificate? There'll be more. I mean, you said you new guys, you absorb some of it, but it's like learning a new language. You've got hola, and that's about it.
Right. I mean, it's you're building up exposure.
Right, and then I just want to talk a little bit about the poll books. When you guys get them, they're always two colors. See here, there's a blue one for me. There's a white one for the county. Only the white one has to be signed.
Yeah.
So don't, there's a few people like to make them sign everything, but they don't have to, it's a waste of time. And if you've got schools, if there's a school district going on, then there'll be other colors in there.
Yeah. So you'll always have two, and you might, if you're lucky like Maureen and have 3 school districts, you could have as many as 5 poll books.
Oh,
So exciting.
Although Plum City is only a couple people on there, and I know who they are, so you just print those pages. And the front page will be signed and be done with it. And then we can always make copies for you too, if you need to take them to the school, Durand, or they can make copies there too. They offered that to me before. And then this is what you're doing. You've got your poll books, at least the 2 of them open. You're going page by page, saying on page 2, I've got 2 people. This is who they are. This is the voter numbers. This, when nobody's in there, so that you can go through and make sure you got the same things on there. And then, if you've got 80 voters that come in, there should be a number 80 in there somewhere. If there's a number 81, then it's a chance for you to go, did it skip a number? Let's figure out what happened.
Yeah, so definitely reconciling your books throughout the day, making sure that first shift has reconciled all the numbers, machine, books, everything looks good before they turn it over to second shift. The second shift knows, if something went wrong, who do I need to get in touch with to be like, can you explain this to me? Why are we off on this number?
And they always blame the first shift.
So first shift always has to, clear their name before they step off.
Yeah.
And sign everything, especially getting your chief from first shift to sign on this back page. I've definitely had some, can I bring this to your house after the elections are closed and have you sign here? Because I know you verified that seal, you just forgot to sign.
So this is just a blank of what I send out for the ballot log. You guys can certainly make your own, and the election commission has a template online too of keeping track of your absentee ballots. As you send them out, I like the spreadsheet because then I can go through and put them in order of name if I have to. As you send them out, as you get them back, and then when it's taken to the polling place, the people that are processing them need to write on there that they counted them, what the voter number was on there, and then if they were rejected, why was it rejected? Another problem at the canvas board, we ballots are rejected and we have to go look it up, the certificate, why was it, there's nothing that says why it was rejected, we just know it was.
Yeah, and that's obviously to have a fair and open election, we all have to know if a ballot is not counted, why was that ballot not counted? It couldn't just be because you didn't like the person.
Yeah, maybe.
No,
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 right,
that's
right.
not how it works in this democracy.
All right, fine. And then the other election day forms, like I said, they're in the bag once you get them, and then at the end of the night, there's also forms in there. I know it's hard at the end of the night to start looking at paperwork to see what you need to do, because you pretty much just want to pile it and then you just go home. But everything we give you has got little notes clipped to it. Like this, you guys are familiar with all those little notes that say you need to sign this or don't sign this if you don't use it, and
Your provisional voting packet, which we all know, if at all possible, this is like break glass, use the provisional voting packet.
yeah, because these packets, you tear them apart, just try to put them back together. But if you have a provisional person comes in, wants to vote that way, everything's in here. Who can do it, what your steps are. It's like a script that you can read out to them. The log in there, you can tell them that, you know, you got so much time to come back. I tell them, you know, if you come back like 3 days from now, everybody's gonna know how you voted because you're gonna be the only one on the tally sheet. It's a paper ballot, they can't vote by machine. You gotta get everybody back together and have another little caucus and, not caucus, canvas,
Canvas.
and then it's all right
Yeah.
there, so.
Yeah. So obviously, whenever possible, although every voter has the right, we really want them to only use this right and
I just want them to understand how the
Yeah,
process
really
works.
educate them. The same thing with challenging voters. There's a whole little packet about that, and it's like,
The steps to take and
you
the script to
definitely,
have, and don't sign this card if you don't use it, it says it on there, because I don't like making these, so
Yeah.
don't make me do it.
don't make it this any harder for a county clerk than we already have to.
All right, anybody need a break? Get up, use the potty, get some more chips, no, you said keep going, let's do
Now
it.
we're through. Now we're through.
All right. We are at processing absentee ballot, that's number 26. Those numbered?
I'm up to 32.
Well, that's okay, we've been skipping around, so go back to 26. So when the clerk has absentee ballots, and the clerk doesn't have an office in the hall, the city hall.
Some clerks here don't
Oh,
have an
that's
office.
So during the month, I'm getting absentee ballots, I'm checking them off my ballot log, I'm popping them into here. And every once in a while, I go back through and I look at them, I'm making sure, do they have a signature, do I need to contact this person, do I just, forget something that day, that I've got them. Then that evening, when there's Mondays, nobody can vote absentee anymore, and if I got them all by mail, which I would by then, I'm not gonna get any before the election starts next day. Put them in here, I seal them up. I write on my little card that me, Maureen Manor, is taking this to the town hall, to the city of training, it says. Oh, Mary Marvelous, is who I am.
Mary Marvelous is gonna take this to the city of training.
And I've got the date on there, I've got the time. This goes to down to my town hall. Usually gets put back where all the ballots are. The chief inspector is told that I've got 15 absentee ballots in here that need to be processed. And then they decide if they are gonna have time that morning or if they're gonna let the afternoon shift do it, but it is kept preserved. And at such time when the chief inspector takes it out, they will then sign that card at the bottom. And then this is a town document, I don't need it back here, but.
It was like, I was so convinced that I needed to, because, there's so many signatures on it. Surely the county wants to see this.
I got one here from the town of Waterville, but this is, they did it correctly, it's all.
What
Sure.
time do you put on your,
I put 7 o'clock, that's when polls open, I got it.
but do you lock it at home?
Do it.
Put the seal in it.
Yeah, it's all sealed up before I even get the cards.
Then you still put 7 AM.
But the card goes in there before,
Right.
so I know I'm gonna be there at 7 for sure. I'll give it to them. And then they're gonna, the time and the signature will go onto this card. And that somebody's got it for their records.
Yep.
For when it's opened up. Do you guys want us to go through how to do the absentee ballots?
Or do we feel, does everyone here feel pretty confident on processing absentee ballots?
So you just don't open the envelope until,
Aha, that was.
yes, like this day, you don't open it until.
That's correct. So this certificate envelope is basically, it is a time capsule that will take a voted ballot from a time before the election to election day, which is the only, again, election day, the only time you can vote in Wisconsin. So they haven't voted, they just put their ballot in a time capsule and sent it to the future. And then, you know, you arrive at election day and here you are, here's this whether you actually off in Airbnb, having a great time, but we have their ballot and they're standing here before us on election day in February in Wisconsin.
So you put that envelope, don't open it into the red.
Yeah, yep, so you'll open the outside, so the outside envelope is what you mail it to them, you get these back. When I get them back, as soon as I get them back, I want, if you have children who check the mail, like you're so blessed, like me, you train your children that there will be every terrible punishment if they ever lose one of these ballots.
Or open.
Or open it, or touch it in any way, it must go on mama's desk right away in the box, and don't get it sticky.
I got my husband trained the same way.
No, whoever's getting the mail for you, make sure they know how to do this. And then when you look at them, if you notice right away that there's a witness signature, but there's no witness printed name or address or something like that, you have a chance to go through the process to try and correct
Okay.
those mistakes. You are not statutorily
Well,
required.
you're not obligated.
You're
but-
not obligated, but you have the opportunity. And you, it's gotten a little complicated, so you wanna make sure you are following the exact law as the law stands on the day that you're doing it. I mean, there's been a lot of battles about
So
that.
if you get one without a signature, then it's rejected, right?
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
Because if there is time, you can get the voter and their original witness, come to your office, verify that the ballot inside is the ballot that was voted, and get it into a new certificate envelope with all the information correctly on it. I did this once, and my voter was so impressed with the election security of my election. They thanked me several times for inconveniencing them and their witness. It was pretty amazing.
And the clerk will never reject it. She'll send it along
Yeah.
to the polling place. She might put a little sticky note going, this one,
Watch this one.
yeah, this one
But-
doesn't have a signature, you need to
Don't put it
reject
on
it.
this.
Once
If you
there's-
get it, if you get it in the mail, though, and it's not signed, you can call them and they can sign that exact one, right?
Yeah, I know I looked up the process and I followed it step by step, whatever it said on the election day manual or the whatever. I mean, there were things like the address that I always just was like, well, especially if it's husband wife, you know? It's like, well, you know what their address is. It's literally the thing written right up there. And I would just fix it. But it's gotten a lot more complicated. So right now, standing here, I don't remember exactly each and every detail of the law, so I'm not going to say which we do and don't do. I'm gonna say look it up.
Yeah, and that's the best way.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you get them in the mail, then they'll have your name and address on the back and the stamp that you put on there. You would then look at them and go, oh, wait a minute. They didn't sign it. If it's like Saturday that you got it, right before the election, or you got an election day,
Well,
because it came in the mail,
or they're in Arizona.
or there it is. If you got it on election day, you can still call them and tell them that you're taking it down to the polling place and they have a chance to come down
can-
there
yeah, they
and
can
sign.
come
They
sign.
can't re-vote a new one, but they could sign this one. Otherwise, it will be rejected by the poll workers. They're not even gonna open it. There'll be no voter number attached to it. But it'll be rejected because of
Missing
voter didn't sign.
signature. Yeah, and so, yeah, so it's kind of, you know, depending on what exactly is missing. Obviously, if you filled in the top part and you know, made a mistake, especially like a pretty, then you
This
should not
one,
punish your,
if it's marked and then you scratch it out and you realize, oh, they didn't vote in my office. And I myself would put little initials up there or just, you know, start a whole nother one, get rid of this
Yeah.
one. And then put the poll worker, a little sticky note on there, I made that mistake, it's, you know, it's
Yeah.
okay. But
yeah. Or if, you know, if you get one comes back to you and you're like, I can't really tell if this envelope is sealed or not, like maybe it's got a little tear in it and there's a piece of tape across and you can't tell, did that happen, you know, when the voter was trying to seal it up, or did that happen, you know, afterwards with somebody tampering with the mail? You know, it has to be sealed inside this envelope, so you could call the voter if you have their number, or get in touch with them somehow, if you can ask them, can you verify that you sealed your envelope up, do you remember, did you use tape? Something like that, and then you could put a little note on there, so your poll workers don't reject it, so.
The post office is notorious for not being able to read the date that they process it.
or it'll come, sometimes it gets canceled down the road and stuck in my mailbox. There's nothing on there. So, and the, oh, this one's got tape on it. What's wrong with this one? But, and there's, you know, they say that you need to be able to verify, like if somebody comes along and wants to see your voter records and you show them this, and they're going, "But when did that?" You're just gonna have to, you know, make a log at home saying I received this on this day is basically what you're.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's
your
in your
ballot
absentee
log.
ballot log, and so the dates involved, I mean, you should not obviously be mailing anything out before that statutory first day. And you can probably verify that you didn't mail anything out, I mean, you don't even have the ballots that far in advance, so if you are receiving one back and you haven't even mailed them out, gosh, that would be suspicious, and you would want to make a big note about that. But in general, you know, it's like, we are keeping track of the absentee ballots we issued. We have the records. Our records are perfectly good. We don't, if it's a smudgy postmark, you know, we have to receive them by election day. Are they in hand or are they not in hand? Do you have those times, days written down on your absentee ballot log? Because you sure should, and you should have also emailed it to Maureen so that she could put it in this book.
Yeah, and then here in the, like this one's got, it's obviously been opened, it's got tape all over it. If I got this as a clerk, the first thing I'd be doing would be calling, Miss Betty Booth. It's saying, did you do this?
Tell me.
Did you open this up and then retape it? And if the answer is no, then, no, I'm gonna destroy this one. If there's still a chance, then she won't get to vote again or get a spoiled ballot. But if she
Yeah.
did do it, then there'll be another note, sticky note on there that tells my election workers, yeah, this is okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, almost having gone through 2020, a lot of our absentee voters are very well trained in on this whole thing. I find that the amount of mistakes we're seeing has gone down quite a bit since that April election of 2020.
We got to practice on absentee ballots and
Yeah,
there's a couple of you that, you know, don't know how the process goes. Hopefully your election workers know it, but when you're ready to do your absentee ballots, you know, a quiet time, you're not expecting anybody for an hour or so. You've got your poll books. Usually it's the chief inspector will announce that, you know, I've got a Jordan Jetson here. You'd open up your poll books, you look at the name so that you've got the address there, and I would tell you that it's, you know, on 3000 Jet Lane.
so you're reading it out loud, just like the voter would state it out
So if
loud.
there's anybody, you know, sitting there going, George Jetson doesn't live in our town.
Make a challenge. So it's just, I mean, just like that auditory record is part of the observer process, so the observer, while not looking directly at the poll book, can tell who is voting. You know, the same goes with absentee ballots.
Now, at this point, they do not get a number yet, because the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna open this up and we're gonna make sure everything's okay.
So this is, once we've verified the envelope itself looks good, there's no reason to reject it based on the envelope. Then we're actually opening it.
Have a letter opener or something. if you're
Yeah,
going
that
there.
is one thing that I don't have in place yet. Gotta fix that. Although that does mean we open all of ours along this side.
Yeah.
It's very distinct.
If you got the razor kind, make sure you're not, you know, splitting the ballots in half, have tape at the polling place. All right, whoever's taking the ballots out, well, then they inspect the back of the ballot. Does it have the signature or the initials of the clerk on there? If I got 3 of them and they're good to go, then George Jetson would then get a voter number. And then
Rich
I would put,
Jensen, voter number 20.
and I would put them in my ballot box. I don't make a pile of them because somebody comes rushing in, then I've got all these voted ballots sitting there, then we do one at a time.
Yeah, because just like, I mean, it's like, obviously, you know, we've got these absentee ballots to process and they are also voters and we are making them appear invisibly in the polling place, but if a real person walks in, they're gonna wanna not wait in line behind all of your absentee voters.
A real person?
It's a visible person,
Okay.
a person who is not using time travel to
In
cast their
person
ballot.
All right, now with this one, I've got a Carla Blue Jay.
Oh, Carla Blue Jay. I don't think she was.
And we find her at 1237 Barstool Road, so we've got her in our
Where's
phone.
that? Look at that ward map. I am not convinced.
So we find her, yes, she's registered to vote. People can actually register to vote and get a
Absentee ballot.
absentee ballot, sorry. But then they would go in the supplemental, which you guys got poll books there, that's all the
Yeah.
way in the back of it. So they'd be written in there and then write absentee in big red letters if you can, where their signature would normally go.
I will just make a little note here, there is also a form to issue if you have somebody registered to vote right after the poll books are printed, and so they are not going to be, in the poll book. There is like a little card you can issue them and everything.
So next, then we examine the ballots. Now, county ballots are usually white, give them to you. If you're having a municipal ballot, you pick your own color. Schools, I think, Durand is usually a tan color and Pepin
Pepin
is
is
blue.
blue.
And then Plum City, I forget, that's whatever I make for them because they don't make paper ballots over there, so I do their ballots for them. And so you've got all, you know, it's easy to see at a glance. Here I see I got 2 purple ones. Well, what's the deal with that?
Dun, dun, dun.
So 2 have initials on it. Oh, 3 have initials on it. Well, we've looked at that, then we need to look and see, are both the purple ones voted?
Yep, so at this point, it looks like we've got a good green one. We don't have to check whether or not there is,
Don't forget.
no, not putting it in yet.
I don't know if I have to reject this whole thing or not, but. Okay, so 1 is voted on.
Eight.
This one's blank.
Oh, that was probably their spouse's one.
Well, that's the next question. Did they have a spouse or somebody else how did they get this other ballot? Did they spoil a ballot and ask me to send them a new set? Is that how they got it? So once you determine that, yes, there is a way they could have had legitimately 2 ballots in the house. They didn't vote this one, we can discard it. We know that their husband lives at the same place, he also voted. Then we would issue a voter number.
So Maureen, if this, something like this happened and they screwed up one race, but they voted correctly for the other race, I would still give them a voter number because they have at least 1 paper ballot that we can count.
What would you guys do?
Number comes up on.
I mean, just like if you're on the machine and you undervote or whatever, mess up one of the races, you still can cast your ballot at the end of the night. There is something here left to save.
Right. Well, we gave them a number anyway, but if they voted both of them, like both the purple ones,
Mhm. I would just throw the purple ones out, because
Okay.
they only screwed up one of their races.
So those would go back into our certificate, rejected number 1. It goes in our, is it the brown one? The brown one there. So that later on, if the canvas board or the recount people need to figure out why this is rejected, they can look in there and see that. And then in the inspector statement, overvoted, purple ballot, green ballot accepted.
Okay, because you get the envelope, the certificate envelope into that.
Yes, it's in there, or, voted on 2 ballots, both discarded into there. So just make sure that you explain what you're doing. It might not be right, but if there's a way to follow that, then we can say, we got something for training next time. Don't do that.
I mean, it definitely, most ballots are just gonna be really straightforward, and if you get an exciting one, take the time to make sure you're looking it up, doing it right, because it's really hard to remember. What did they say at the training? You can get it backwards.
Now, if
We could
he,
have gotten it backwards. We've made mistakes in the training as well.
now, if he only had the 2 ballots in there, but you happen to look at the front and they voted for both of them, this is not the time to be looking at that. We don't even want to know what's on the front. You saw it by mistake. It goes
Yeah.
into the ballot box to be rejected later on.
Yep, when we're counting the ballots, then we start,
We only took a quick peek to see if they were both voted or not.
because you don't want to just, because that would be a problem, but we're not there yet. Because again, 1 vote per voter is the rule. We don't want to end up with an excess of voted ballots for a race that you don't want. At the end of the night, you had 80 people voting and you have 84 purple ballots in your ballot box. That's that.
So what are you supposed to do with the ballot that's not voted? You keep it or you just?
Yeah, I'll set it aside for my records, but it's not really a.
It's because there's no vote on it. Now, when we get down into counting the ballots, there you want to have the envelope for,
Yeah, now if I had looked at the ballots and I voted for 2 people in the same race, then it would go into here. I would have something on there, rejected ballot number 1, overvoted, inspector statement, and then it would go into that envelope, which can go then into the ballot
ballot
bag.
bag to be part of the ballots that get examined, should there be a recount, to try and figure out what exactly happened.
Yeah, so if somebody later on can recreate what you did, that's all we're really asking.
Yeah.
Leave a trail. All right, and all this information is in the election day manual. I just made little bullet points and we've gone through that. Is there a next page?
We forgot to check the ineligible voter list that will be
Oh, yeah.
issued to you along, give it a glance kind of when it comes, because you don't want to, as people are registering to vote, you just want to make sure they're not ineligible, or as they're trying to vote.
Or requesting absentee ballots. Yeah, they might be on that list. It's usually just the city of Durand. Most of us don't have.
Other people move around, so you see a name on there and you might want to do a little more research.
If you get somebody that's on your ineligible voter list and they quite insist they are not, then call the state. They have made mistakes before. All right. Said, all this is in the book. You can look it up. Don't be afraid during election day to just say, hold on, take a second, all hell's breaking loose. We don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Just grab your book, make a phone call, call Audrey, she'll call me, I'll look it up in the book. I don't have so many people there.
Yeah, and definitely the more times practice stuff, the more you kind of read those pages ahead of election day, the easier it is. I can't read worth a darn when like 3 people are all staring at me giving suggestions. That's always a really bad time for me to come up with an answer.
Mm-hmm. So feel free to put it off on somebody else. I'll tell my election workers that I'm gonna call Martha, so just wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas I tell them, I'm gonna call Marie.
All right, I think we talked about all that. We already talked about it, voters' eyes.
Yep.
No process. Who could return an absentee ballot? and
This has
how.
changed.
Now, when I was first writing up this training, I was looking in the election administration manual. And they told me that, you know, anybody could bring it in. I called the state and said, that's not right. They go, oh yeah, we just updated that yesterday.
New
So the
election
September
adminis-
one was completely wrong from the November one. So that's why I'm saying you gotta look it up. They changed the law because in 2020, there was accusations of ballot harvesting, people going
Whatever
around and
happens.
collecting ballots, and there got to be a question where all these ballots came from. So now
And the whole
you
thing with
can bring me
Dropbox
your
is-
ballot, but you can't bring me your husband's.
Okay, so that's still the same.
Yep, so.
And in the polling place, here's mine and my wife's, is she out in the car? Make her come in here and give it to us.
Yep, so you can only, you can still walk your ballot in on election day, but you can't walk anyone else's ballot in. Which is why it's good to encourage people to mail their ballots back and not walk them in. Especially if they have that situation, if they experience that, just really encourage them, like, you know, try and return your ballot by mail next
And
time.
if you have somebody, like I've got several people, if they gather up everybody's in their family and they bring them to me, let them know ahead of time. I can't take it.
Just so you know,
But sometimes I'll come home and they'll be sitting in my screen door, I'm like, well, I'm going to assume that every one of them brought this back. I don't have
Yeah.
evidence to the otherwise, but.
I know there's definitely, there's this whole thing about drop boxes, there's been this whole thing about, you know, how ballots come and go and who can mail them and who can, well, you cannot, there's no record of who put that ballot in the mail. So that's not something we can enforce. When you receive them, if I get a ballot in my mailbox, it's a US mailbox, I assume the US Postal Service put it there because I have no other way of knowing that except sometimes they deliver mail at odd times. But you do really want to make sure as much as possible, this whole thing has gotten very contentious. Leads to lots of record requests. So we want to try and just have everything be real clean and neat and tidy.
Yeah, or at least know the rules.
At least know the rules. Exactly.
That's all we're asking. All right. Assisting voters, number 33. Did you get your mic for a reason?
I was gonna ask somebody.
You forgot?
No.
What were you gonna ask?
Well, I was thinking about the spouse of the one that had the double purple.
Yeah,
So then that person, the short one, but I guess it wouldn't really matter. You just, whatever
Well,
is
and-
available. Maybe they decided not to vote.
I would really. At a certain point, there's how much do you know and how much do you not know and don't need to know and don't even want to know. So yeah, it would be really unusual for someone to have an extra ballot with your signature on it. And you could look and make sure it's not photocopied. But if it's really your signature and it's on a ballot, you know, you issued that ballot. And, you know,
Yeah.
from there,
You would just take.
move on. It's
Move
never
on.
happened
So
to me.
Right.
I don't think it's ever happened to me until I've had it happen before where I had husband and wife come to vote absentee in the clerk's office and they voted and they put their ballots into their certificate envelopes and they signed them, but they actually got confused and each signed the other ones. Certificates, there was this little shuffle and the next thing I knew I had the wrong signature on the wrong envelope kind of thing and, you know, that kind of stuff. When everybody's standing right there and they're trying to be helpful, is much more likely to kind of go sideways.
Yeah. Did you just sit them down and redo the envelopes or ask them if they voted the same or?
No, I didn't ask them how they voted. I think I made I think I wrote a whole essay from my coworkers about how this had happened right in front of me, but I had seen that they had gotten their envelopes, their votes into the correct envelopes, and this is what was going on. And
I've seen
it's
that
back in
in
2020.
poll books that come back, little arrows that, you know, they signed the wrong places.
Yeah.
That works for me.
I
At
mean,
least
it's
I
like
know
we-
what happened.
We have the record, we have everything we need to verify, we just don't always have it in exactly the right place.
All right, So assisting voters. The thing we need to remember about this, that I don't think most of us are doing, is that we need to keep a record of it. So we've checked in our voter, we've given them a ballot. They say they need help. Either they need the help of their kid or their mother, or if nobody else is there, then one of you can help them. That needs to be recorded in the poll book.
The name and address of the person assisting.
So usually you can put it right by their name where they have signed.
And then say assisted by,
Yep, and then if they're doing paper, that goes on the back of the paper ballot too.
there's a place for.
They sign that.
Assisted.
And then put it in the inspector's statement. So keeping track of all that, and then it can't be the employer, like Audrey can't help me vote, because she's gonna tell me then who I need to vote for, so.
And this can get a little tricky, because I do have some folks who work, it's a family farm. The farm is owned by dad, and the son needs assistance sometimes to vote. But he, his only employment is the farm that's owned by his father, so technically his dad should not be there helping him vote, because that's his employer. And, these laws, when it's the employer or the labor union officer or agent, these laws, my understandings went on the books back when it was common practice for the factory whistle to blow and the factory owner to march all of his workers down to the polls and assist them in voting. I mean, this is Wisconsin. We have some really interesting history in this state. Now, that wasn't thinking about, somebody's family farm, but a law is a law. So if we have somebody else who can assist, I could assist as a clerk, something like that, then that's probably going to be a better option.
Yes,
If you have a curbside voter come to vote,
Mhm.
and you have to take the ballot out, and the chief inspector and another poll worker has to go out there, then everything in the
Polling
polling
place
place comes to a stop.
comes to a
Why do
complete
people
stop.
get angry at that?
it's the
You
same
know
with
what?
this, if she's gotten up to help somebody vote and I come in and I wanna, state my name and address, that's gonna have to wait till she's done helping them vote. And yeah, with the curbside vote, if you only have 3 election inspectors, I mean, City of Duran's got like, what, 40? There has to be 3 at all times, so yeah, we'll go over a little bit about curbside voting, and I always give you guys a handout on exactly how to do that, because none of us remember. But yeah, everything stops until we are done with that person.
I mean, technically, if you've got 3 poll workers there and one of them needs to use the bathroom, voting has ceased until your 3rd person comes back. It is a 3-person
Yeah.
process, 3 live bodies in those chairs. Or no election. Which obviously most people will go to the bathroom if it's been super quiet and there's no voter pulling into the parking lot, obviously you want to make this as easy as possible for your voters.
But that's when they do pull up, when you're in
I
the
know,
porta potty
right?
going,
But-
"Ah!"
And then you just say, hey, how's it going? I heard your wife, is starting a job and your daughter's not engaged, right? And then the person comes back and they're like, okay, now say
During COVID, it was bad because we had so many
Yeah.
curbside voters, and so it had to stop several
It's
times,
gotta-
and we didn't have a lot of our chief inspectors
But
during COVID.
it's like a line. You wait in line. You wait in line for that curbside voter. You wait. Of course, you can't vote because you're waiting in line besides somebody else, and it's their turn. I mean, it's if you kind of explain to people what is going on, so they understand what's going on, and be like, you just have to wait because there's somebody in front of you who's voting curbside. Then they might intuitively grasp that.
You can go to the next one.
I just had a question. How
Yeah.
about this assisting voters is for paper? How about the machine?
You can do it on the machine too, you're just not gonna sign anything on the machine,
Would you
but,
put in this?
but it'll be in the poll book and the inspector statement.
Yeah,
that
so if
we're
you're,
assisted.
yeah, so
No
if,
names.
if you didn't realize somebody's gonna need assistance with the machine, but then they went over there and they're like, I can't read this, I can't get my finger to stop shaking to push the button, I need somebody to help, then after the fact, right, down under their name and their voter number that you already processed, go back and write in that somebody assisted them or somebody they have with you or one
Yeah,
of the
you
poll workers.
You still write it down, like, but there's no signature from that person that's assisting.
Yeah.
So assisting wise, I mean, you can select it for them on the machine then, if they tell you,
If they tell you that you,
so they can say out loud who they're, or do they have? to
or if
whisper
they
it to
can't
you?
read and you have to read it to them.
Okay.
I mean, this is why you kind of want to have something resembling of those. I
Yeah.
mean, the village hall in the village of Stockholm is like the size of some porta potties. You know, it's like,
Now, so.
that's good. You know, it is a really small space, and there is only, you know, if somebody is really hard of hearing, they're very old, they're having a hard time, they might be saying really loudly
That's
who
what
they
I'm
want
thinking,
to vouch
if that
for.
would be confidential then, if,
You know, you can only do so much,
Yeah.
if that is how that person, if that is that person's preferred way to vote, they should be allowed to vote however they want
okay.
to. If, you know, at all, if you see that you've got a situation on your hands and you've got one other person waiting who is, you know, and you want to respect that person's privacy, you could just ask your next voter, would you mind stepping out for a moment while we allow this person to vote?
Okay.
And it's poll workers usually don't really care anymore after a while who you're voting for. Let's just, move it along.
Yeah, yeah, so.
All right.
Well, and I'll just say real quick, I mean, as poll workers, we have sometimes occasion to know how other people vote because we've assisted them, because we've looked at their ballots, because we've,
We know who they are.
know who they are, you know, however that comes about. Obviously, part of this job is keeping that knowledge to ourselves. That should go without saying, but there are situations in which you have that confidential knowledge and you will keep it confidential.
Yeah. So I put this in here because I like to use it as a reference for what people can and cannot do at the polling place. This is part of the observers packet. It's a little brochure that all of you get. Which at some point, I think you're setting it, you made yourself a little observer area that they can sit over there and watch what's going on, not too far away, but not too close. They have little badges they can put on, they sign a little log sheet. And this lets you know what the observers can and cannot do. And a lot of it pertains to, just your voters coming in too. Part of maintaining the order in your polling place. People come in and they, here's, a lot of screaming or electioneering. It's just not a comfortable place for them to be. We want people to be able to come and participate. And also in there is a order to leave. That's the next one. That the chief inspector can sign that says, you gotta go, this is why, this is your notice that you need to leave right now, and that's your first step. Like, okay,
For the reasons described below.
here's your notice, you gotta go, and then if they don't go, the election day manual says call clerk. And then if the clerk can't handle it, then, law enforcement would be the next step.
Probably the clerk at that point would call the sheriff.
If you're an observer and, we ask their name and address, the two people, but they're sitting over here and they didn't hear and they'll say, what is their name and their address? Do we have to tell them?
They have a right to hear it. Maybe they need to sit a little closer.
Well, we have an observer chair, the certain amount of feet away. but
yeah.
Yeah, some people
Yeah.
don't say their name and address.
Yeah, that's
very
true.
loud and-
Yeah, they are allowed, to view the poll book. They cannot disrupt voting. They cannot get in the way of people having access to the ballot in a timely fashion. You want to get through everyone. You don't want to disrupt the polling place. But if somebody came in, they voted, now they're back by the machine and the observer says, oh, I didn't hear that name and address. Can you say that again? I would have no problem with that because that is a public record.
Yeah,
Except
or
the
if you,
people who gave it to you look at you and like, no, don't tell them.
Well, I mean, voting is.
they're not in the right there, or the observer can tell me if you're still on the same page, or can you turn to that page, they can't touch anything. Or if they're, they can't elbow voters out of the way, but there's nobody there, they can just take a quick glance and.
Yeah, you could invite them over to look. I mean, The point of this is to be open and transparent. The public records are public records. Anybody has the right to those records. That's part of the process. How you vote is not going to be part of the public record, but that you voted will.
So the person coming to vote, then they don't have any privacy. If an observer wants to know who they are,
That's
their name and their address.
It is a public activity. It is absolutely a public activity. Voting in this
It's the
country.
same with absentee ballots. We're reading them out loud so that everybody in there knows that George Jetson is submitting a ballot.
Participating in their democracy. There's nothing to be ashamed about participating in your democracy.
And like Martha said, anybody can get a copy of the polling book after, we're done with them, and they can see who voted and what elections. And then you can get that from the state too for, I think, $25.
A reasonable fee.
All right. Moving on, end of the line officer. Where that is, but on my schedule, when I make out a schedule, on the afternoon shift, I always put end of line officer under somebody's name, so they know that when the polls are closed, chief inspector said polls are closed, and I've still got 30 people in line, that person gets up, they don't have to check in people anymore because
Polls are closed.
polls are closed. Stands behind that person, and anybody trying to sneak in is not gonna make it.
You're gonna politely ask them, I'm sorry, I'm the end of line officer, and it's 8 o'clock, the polls are closed, you may not. Now, can be really confusing for some of us who have very small municipalities, and we're like, wait, what? But if you think about the video footage, media footage of, presidential elections, and the line is going across the block, whoever is standing in that line at the time polls close, if you are standing in line, you're still gonna vote. The voting might then continue until 10 o'clock at night to get through those hundreds of people going around the block. That's not gonna happen in the town of Stockton, I guarantee it.
Now, if you have something like that, you might hire an extra person to go standing in the back of the line, because you probably still gotta check all those people in.
Yeah,
But, or, a police officer might be a better
yeah,
choice
if
because
you're dealing
Or
with
get a second
situations
machine.
like that.
get more machines, yeah.
Hopefully, we will never find ourselves quite
Yeah.
at that.
I've never had that problem. At 8 o'clock, I'm usually looking out the door to see if anybody's screaming into the parking lot. It's like, oh.
Yeah, I have had a voter pull in,
Yeah.
and it's literally 7:55. They're using a walker. They're in the parking lot, in the handicap parking spot. They are very slowly getting their walker set up. They are very slowly getting themselves to the door of the polling place. Obviously, we're going to let them vote. I mean, it's like, we're not gonna be like, oh, well, by the time you cross the threshold, like, they were here at 7:55.
Yeah, there's nothing says you gotta stop the voting right at 8. You've got someone, screaming in, but if you have closed it down, you're not gonna open it back up.
Once the polls are closed, the polls are closed.
And then an end of the line officer is important for if the state ever comes and inspects you, because they're gonna ask you if you have a designated end of the line officer, and you can go,
We always verbally designate who it will be.
Yep, that
Yeah,
guy right there.
Yeah, but I will put it on my schedule someday.
All right, you do that. And then we just talked a little bit about closing the polls, so you look on your machine, I always make sure my machine says it's 8 o'clock.
Yeah, we go by the time on the machine. If the machine is off by a minute from the clock on the wall, we're not looking at our cell phones, we're looking at the machine.
Yeah, because that's what's people can look at and say, wait a minute, you close at 7:55, what's up with that?
Be like,
So what
no.
if you have all votes by 6 PM?
Okay.
There's gonna be 78 people.
What if someone comes in to register to vote?
Well, that sucks for them.
Even if like,
I'm hungry by then.
you're just, I mean, really, like, the access to the ballot is a guaranteed sort of,
Okay.
right, so even though you're like, well, we have 70 registered voters, we've already had, 72 people vote because we had 2 election day registrations, there is no one left in the village of Taco, I know, every single person, don't go home, because the same.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, or, it's.
I think you'd be fine to, like, call for pizza, be like, okay, deliver to
Stockholm?
Stockholm.
Maybe the pie shop will be open.
Yeah, maybe the pie shop can bring you a pie. but you're still stuck there.
All right,
Okay.
so we've declared the polls closed, usually the chief inspector, stand up, I declare the polls closed. The machine gets turned off either by,
Or the you
Not-
can't close the polls.
I did it again, didn't I? The machine that you close the polls on the machine, turn it off and unplug it and leave, don't do that.
Don't do that. We're not done yet.
Close the polls and it'll print you out the total tape.
Yeah.
Then you need to figure out how many total tapes you need. If it's just a county election, you need one for your tally sheet, one to go in the bag, and one for your tally sheet, just in case something gets lost and you can look it up later on. If you've got your municipal election, you want one for that. The school boards want one too. I don't remember if they want them in their ballot bag or not.
Yeah.
They do, so
I
you,
don't, we actually, I mean, the ballot bags are only opened if there's a recount, but if there is a recount, they're gonna want a copy of that.
and then it's also on the tally sheet, but
Yes. because-
sometimes those are messed up, you can't read them very well, so just start counting off on your fingers how many you got, and some of the long ones take forever and you've forgotten where you were, so I just my digital counter.
I mean, one of the first elections I was a chief for, I was supposed to know how many tapes we were supposed to print, and I was like, I have no idea, and we printed like, I don't know, so many. We were just like kept printing tapes and printing tapes, because I was like, I don't know, but really it comes down to how many elections are you holding that night? Are you holding, because each, the state and county, that's, one color ballot, that's one election, so to speak, and then the municipality is its own separate sort of unit of government that's holding an election that night, and the school boards is, again, another unit that has to hold an election, and so you wanna make sure you've got a tape for each unit that's having an election, plus one in the ballot bag.
Now, if it's a difficult election, it's got like 5 tally sheets just for the state and county because of the primaries. We don't need a tape on each one of those because the tapes are all the same. Just
Yeah.
one tape will do.
We gotta have one tape in order to verify, because when you're canvassing an election, you have to verify how many votes were cast for this election, and the total tape is the record for what the machine recorded. Because we're not going back and counting those voter verified paper audit trail ballots unless we absolutely have to.
Yeah, so when the canvas board holds the canvas, we do not open the ballot bag. You never
Once
look.
it's sealed, it's sealed.
If we need something out of there, we call the clerk of that town municipality. They come, they open it, they take it out, they re-sign the card, they put another seal on it. The canvas board never touches the ballots. The only time they ever get touched is if we have a recount or when they're destroyed, which is usually after 22 months or depends on what kind of election it was. So when the canvas board looks at a tally sheet, they're making sure it's signed. If you've noticed that, I've checked the wrong boxes on here, just go ahead and check the right ones, or I've got the date wrong on there, or I've given you somebody else's.
Oh, so it says like, oh, I have the village of Stockholm instead of the town of
Just go
Stockholm.
ahead and correct that so that you're making a record for when the canvas board gets it or the county clerk gets it, we go, oh, I see what happened.
But it's just a tool. So it's like, as long as it has the correct information on it somewhere, this tool is a usable tool.
The last, it says give the number of the last vote on the poll list. The state says it a different way, but I'm trying to get across to you that if you had 80 voters, you put 80 in here. It's not how many registered voters you have, that's on your poll book, like mine's 270 or something. I'm never gonna have 270 people vote, I hope. There's a lot of people.
Town of Stockholm has had some really great voter turnout for presidential elections.
Usually it's the village of Stockholm who's the winner
Oh,
for
gosh, well, it doesn't count. You guys have so few people and they're all adults. Everybody's over.
And you guys just call each other and say, hey, you didn't come vote yet. So on here, it would be 80 votes. Paper goes at the end here, so you've got 50 paper, not 50 machine, I mean.
Yeah.
the little boxes, little squares, that's for counting the paper ballots.
Yeah, so just to make sure we all are on the same page here, we are making tally marks for our paper ballots. That's our absentee ballots, how many people voted on paper. We are never making tally marks for the votes cast on the machine, because the tally marks are just a tool to make sure we have the right number when we're counting paper ballots.
Yeah, we already know what the machine says. Unless you're unrolling that and actually counting it, then you can make tally marks.
But you should never do that because your machine is so accurate. And if anyone gets that wonderful little email from the WEC that they're auditing your voting machine, let me know, because that happened to me twice in a row. So now I'm really, really good
Yeah,
at
sure.
verifying the auditing my voting machine. And every single time the machine has been right and all the errors have been human.
So at the Canvas board, we'll look at this, and if you've got 6 tally marks for Carla Cool, we'll make sure that you put 6 in the paper totals. And then we'll look and see on your tape, did it say 40? If it's 40, did you write 40? All right, did you add them correctly? And if all that's good, that's great. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But if you put all machine in the tallies, there's no way for us to tell how many papers you actually counted for that person. And that's one of the things we do there is verify that the number you told us on election night is the number we wrote down, which is actually the number that was on here. Because sometimes it's a long night. You read the wrong number, we write the wrong number. So we are pretty much just verifying returns at Canvas. We don't do any counting except for that little bit right there, just your totals.
Real quick, let's talk about write-ins. Hopefully everyone knows if we have 0 registered write-ins. Okay, there are only certain times that we count the write-ins. So if we don't have anybody registered as a registered write-in, and there is somebody running for that election already, with somebody on the ballot, we don't need to count the write-ins.
If it's a vote for one and you got one person at least in there, then anybody that just wrote in,
You know,
a name.
themselves or Donald Duck or whatever, you don't have to then like add themselves and Donald Duck and whatever onto the tally sheet. You might want to put down scattering just so you can make the numbers add up at the end of the night. That is sometimes helpful, but it is not required. Although the county clerk often asks me about the scattering and I'm like, I don't know, what do I need to know?
Don't worry about it. But if you do have a registered write-in, and it's the state or county level, you will get a piece of paper, might not come till after, because they don't have to register, they have till 5 o'clock on the Friday before. So you might not get that in your bag, but you'll certainly get it emailed to you. Those should be written in here.
Yep, and
So it's a
so,
legitimate registered write-in, so that way we know at the Canvas board that you looked at this person and they indeed had 0 votes because you looked at them. You know
yeah,
about it.
so this will happen, you know, when we have a presidential primary, there is all sorts of people who are registered write-ins for the presidential primary, who none of us have ever heard of and who our voters have not voted for. But all of those names will get written on our tally sheets because they are registered write-in and we want to show that we were alive, awake, and paying attention. And we just simply did not get any votes for.
And if there's no room because there's so many, separate sheet of paper will do and just put the right headings on there. And so you've got your list of registered voters. You can keep them with you at the table here, but they have to be face down.
Yeah, so you will have a list of registered write-ins if you have any registered write-in candidates, and we're gonna make sure that piece of paper is face down.
Why? Electioneering, you know, I've got the names sitting right there who I might influence somebody. Only if they ask, are there any registered write-ins? You go, yes, there are.
You know, especially if there's anyone else in the polling place, you don't necessarily want to be like, oh yeah, so-and-so is running for the, you know, county board. Have you heard about that? You just wanna put the paper so that, you know, just like we're not electioneering in other ways, we don't want to be electioneering on behalf of the registered write-in.
I also read in the election day manual that if someone asks if the person on the ballot is the incumbent, you're not supposed to tell Okay.
Because I guess that would include.
I guess
their
you could
vote.
show them the type A notice. It's got all the stuff on there, but.
For the
Look it up
registered,
on your phone.
Yeah, or just return to
Or
your.
here's a directory.
the registered write-ins are gonna be on the machine then?
So the registered write-ins will not be on the machine
What-
because they are
once-
writing. in
right.
the
So
snippets.
Somebody would have to know that they're write-in. or-
Ads in
Yeah.
the paper.
Okay.
they're
Oh,
going
yeah.
on.
Yeah, so I mean, I will,
That's the write-in part of it.
yeah.
That's a good question.
My first election, cycle, Angie Boxell ran a registered write-in campaign for the County Board of Supervisors, so Diane Milner was on the ballot and Angie was running. And, you know, when we had somebody come in and they would be like, there's somebody who's a registered write-in, do you remember who that is? I would be like, are you asking to see the list of registered write-ins? Like, you know, it's like if somebody is clearly trying to ask you that question, but they don't know the secret password, then there is no secret password. You can just show them the list if that's
Okay.
what they're looking for. And again, you know, when we were counting those votes, we saw all the different spellings of Boxell that there are or could be. And, you know, if we got Annie Boxell instead of Angie Boxell, we counted it for
Okay.
Angie because it was, voter intent was pretty clear here. She was running, she was a registered write-in for that race. We didn't have to have her name spelled exactly right to know who they were trying to.
So if they're not on that registered list, but then during voting, somebody puts a random name, you don't have to count it.
Unless there is no one running for that seat, which also happened on my first election. There was
Fair
the
enough.
town, yeah, don't worry about, well, Village has such exciting politics. You might not have this problem, but in my,
Oh, they gotta vote for two, don't they?
oh my gosh.
So if you have only
Yeah.
one name on there, then
Then
yeah.
your second one would be, yeah, so we had an open town board seat and nobody had been nominated at the caucus. It was just town board supervisor number 4, vote for 1, and there was no name there. So we counted every single thing that was written in, everything, and we tallied them all up. And at the end of the night, Ron Smith got, I think, 11 or 12 votes, and that was more than anyone else got. And he became the next supervisor, which was great because that's who we were hoping. Everybody on the town board had written him in and told their spouses to write him in because we knew he didn't register as a registered write-in, but he did let us know that he would be willing to be
Okay.
elected.
Yeah, now if you got that and you didn't know if this person would do it or not, you need to call them and say, you got the most votes, are you
So
interested?
guess what? Are you going to now be the supervisor? And yeah, it can be a little bit interesting. So that's, I mean, obviously that's not gonna happen at a federal or state level, but it can sometimes happen at a municipal level.
Okay.
We had somebody write their name in and there was nobody running, so they had 2 votes because it was him and his girlfriend. Or wrote his name in, so I'm like, wow, put your name on there, do you wanna do it?
Yeah, if it's
Sure,
a
city council
LEC,
member.
I mean, hopefully.
Nobody was there, he goes, what, so I put my name down, I'm like, well, this is
Well,
what happened.
that's what we're you know, sometimes that's, oh my goodness, hopefully we get more excitement around elections and we have people registering or being a candidate.
All right,
Twist their arm, make them file their candidacy papers.
Explain the, tie vote.
tie vote, well, we were just getting to the
Oh.
counting the ballots, kind of. Hold on now. All right, so we've closed the election. We've closed the polls on the
Thank you.
machine.
Polls are closed on the machine.
We were printing off our tapes. That big wad of paper in the machine is going to go in the ballot bag.
And this for new clerks is an easy one to forget. Just like leaving your election ballot bin in the machine is a really easy one to forget. You have to make sure, how many machines do you have? Do you have the paper rolls for all of your machines?
Did
And
you
are they
change paper during the
in-
day?
Yep.
That should go in right away into your ballot bag and set back securely someplace. Those are all voted ballots. Voted ballots go in the ballot bag.
And if you did change paper on your machine, please write it in your inspector log, because now there's gonna be a couple different rolls. And we want to know, did they have an extra machine? Is this somebody else's ballots? No, they just had 2 paper rolls.
All right, so we got those in there. We printed off our stuff for signing, our total sheets. We're gonna open up our ballot boxes. Take out all our ballots.
A very high election security here.
And at this point, then we usually will sort them into colors. And then we'll look at the back. If there's some that aren't signed, with this, make a mental note of it, because if we got too many ballots, for some reason, somehow the unsigned one got in there, is it blank? That would be the first one we're gonna draw down if we've got too many ballots versus voters.
But you do want, because for those of us who don't issue paper ballots all the time, it is really good to remind your inspectors at the beginning of every shift that if they issue a paper ballot, 2 inspectors must sign the back, because it's really easy to get out of practice with that.
Up in it, it says it on the back there.
Yeah, but they're paying attention.
If you're paying attention. So we take them out, we sort them. And then usually we'll start with the county at our level at Frankfurt. If there's 2 different parties, then we'll sort those into parties just to help with the counting. And then one person will read the tape totals, the other person will start saying Joe Cool. My 2 people with the 2 tally sheets will say Joe Cool 1. Joe Cool 2. I want them both to say that, because if at some point you get to Joe Cool 5 and you're saying Joe Cool 6, let's start over. We're already off. It gives you, if you're hearing what each other is saying and you're off, that's a big help. Although technically when you get to 5, we need to tally. That's in the law.
Oh, God. Is it really?
No. But it is a tally sheet.
It is
Come
a
on.
tally sheet. And obviously, the first time a inspector, has only worked the morning shift, they get on the evening shift, they look at this tally sheet and they're like, why are there so many rows? Why are there so many boxes? It's labeled up above, you go 5 to 100 and then 105 to 200. Hopefully we never get into that level with paper ballots, but
If you gotta keep going, you can make more, I guess, but yeah. So then we've got our paper ballots there, like we said before, you count those, you put paper here, I've got machine 1 and 2, because this person has 2 machines. So they could just put those together and then add everything, so 30, 40, and then whatever it adds up to.
70.
Gosh, we didn't count the paper though.
Oh, okay.
Those just my machines.
Okay, got it, yep.
All right, and it's a public thing. We don't lock the doors. The public can stand there and watch. They don't get to get their faces right in there.
But the candidate can stand there with their vote for me shirt, it's fine, the election is over. So they're not electioneering if it's not election day anymore, it's the votes are cast.
And I found it helpful before if I'm reading off names, that if someone's standing behind me watching, because sometimes you say the same name about 100 times and then
And then
just,
say
that's
the
what
wrong
you see on the
name.
next one, but that's not what was there. And they go, oh, wait a minute. You go, oh, yeah, thanks. So it doesn't hurt for them to watch what you're doing. They just can't start jabbering about it or be taking pictures of it on the phone, and
Yeah, we don't want.
don't want that.
If you, for the presidential, because it's such a big night, I try and schedule some extra people, especially during peak hours, than I would for any other election. And it's nice if you've got somebody, somebody who wants to help, somebody who's not from your municipality or, isn't necessarily hasn't done the training to be a poll worker, but you want to get them, they can come in just for the end of night. They could come in because everybody is fried who has been on shift since the middle of the day, and just like having a few new people in there and be like, how about you read because you're fresh, trying to get everybody alert, awake, ready to go.
I've had high schoolers do it before.
Yeah, and you just
Yeah.
want to make sure that everybody's on the same page, knows what the process is, and then buckles down. No talking, no getting distracted, no making jokes.
Yeah, so you're all done counting, paper ballots go in here, you've got your rolls in here, 1 totals tape. Just in case, I'm not sure why. You could put your rejected ballots that you had that were voted, you can put those in there. That's for state and the county. Now for your own ballots, I'll give you guys something like this
Our municipal ballot
that I
bag.
bought really cheap and then
Thank
stuck a
you.
sticker on. And then you keep you put your own, the tape rolls are gonna go with us. That's, I'm not gonna separate that out, but your own
If
paper
we got,
ballot
you know,
will
our
go in
own
here.
ballots.
If you want a total tape in there, you can, it's up to you.
And the same thing, the school boards will be giving you ballot bags for their ballots, and you wanna make sure at the end of the night, they've got their ballots back. I've got my municipal ballots, and the county's got everything else.
All right, any questions on that? We talked about that already, yeah. And the paperwork to send back to the county, you get a list of end of the night sheets. Basically, all the stuff we gave you. All the envelopes, the tally sheet, the inspector statement.
I mean, and it's really great at 7 o'clock when you're like, oh my God, I can't believe we're gonna be sitting here for another hour. That's a great time to try and go through all these lists. That's a great time to make sure everything is signed. You don't wanna wait till the very end of the night.
Get your envelope signed when we've got the school board stuff for the 3 different school districts. I know the same people that are gonna be tallying it are sitting right there. I'll let them sign and those get put in a pile somewhere that I can try to keep them separate from each other. Which
And
is, job.
Don't forget that as soon as you are done tallying, you've got some phone calls to make. Because it's really easy to be like, we are done tallying, go home, go to bed. You're not done yet until you've called the results in, the county, state stuff to,
Yeah, because Audrey's gonna be sitting there until she hears from you. If she does not hear from you, she will track you down.
I will call you and be like, I want to go home. Are you done yet? Oh yeah, we were done an hour ago.
By law, she has to get that stuff up on the county website because there's all kind of news people that, especially for the presidential one, that are looking, they're asking her, it hasn't been updated in 20 minutes, what's going on? It's like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
So that's the only place you can get the information is county by county on
There is-
election night until after the canvass.
Yeah,
Because the results don't get all pulled together until after all the counties has completed their canvasses.
which is after all the provisionals have been shown to not exist, which is after, so it's the Monday following the Tuesday election. So until then, everybody's looking to the county. And for the municipal, it's great if you have a municipal website and you want to put your municipal results up on your municipal website. Nobody really tends to care, but you never know, somebody might care someday. Otherwise, you want to make sure and call the school superintendent, usually gives you their number to call in your election results to them.
And usually the county wants that information too, because we put it on our website.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah,
we have to
we do.
report it to the state. When I go in and put in all the numbers for the state and county, I have to do it for all the municipalities so that the state knows what's going on and for all the school
Schools.
boards.
Yep.
So if you have a mistake you found later on at your own canvas,
Yeah.
let me know.
And then, if you, obviously, again, we wanna get the ballots back to whom they belong. So we will get the ballot bags, blue ones, not the red ones. The red ones are absentee. Use the blue bag sealed up correctly with the right seal number written on the thing that goes on the front. We'll get all that to Marine the next day,
And then the schools will tell you how and when they want their
There's
ballots.
ballots back.
Usually Duran School will come by here and pick them all up. Pepin wants theirs right away and they have to go and give it to them.
Yep.
And then Plum City, they're just whatever.
I don't know, I'm sitting there.
Yeah, they don't really.
Well, I think you usually got what, 3 or 4 votes for them.
Yeah, exactly. But every vote counts, especially in.
All right, so,
Are we?
all right, let's do the curbside order. Let's go over that for. That is number 21.
We missed it. I think we talked,
We did.
yeah, I think,
But we didn't,
no, that's a director's statement.
And it's in your guys' packets.
Yeah.
No, it's 47, sorry, 21 is a handout. It does make a difference, so I give you guys these handouts. Well, that's what it looks like when we have our returns. That's not 27.
No, that's 40. We need to go forward to.
Or 47.
40, that's.
All right, so you get handouts for every election, It says how to handle curbside voters. I would suggest having a clipboard with you and some sort of envelope, or, you know, if you have a clipboard with a clippy on it, you could turn the ballots over once they voted on them, just to, you know, tell them to fold them up. But this tells you, you know, exactly what you need to do. I don't know that we've ever done this exactly, but pretty darn close.
The inspectors return to the voting area and announce, I have a ballot offered by voter's name, a voter who, as a result of a disability, is unable to enter the polling place without assistance. Does anyone object to the reception of this ballot?
Yeah, I don't think we've done that.
You know, this whole thing doesn't happen very often, but you don't, you know, this is why we do training, and so you can learn the exact proper procedure to follow.
And the voter does not need to sign the poll book. You're not taking that outside, but you'll come back in and make a notation in it. And that's just something I wanted to point out, but you guys get this information. You don't have to memorize it. You just have to remember it's in here somewhere.
We
What
got
we
it in
do.
that big blue bag.
Same with challenging an elector. That information is in there, step by step of what to do, provisional, the same. A lot of stuff that we never do, but there's things coming up all the time that we never thought we'd have to do, so we provide you with that information. And then also in there is the last minutes from our canvas, which I usually provide for the polling place to give you guys something to look at what you did wrong. And then I have a page in there that's got little synopsises from the last few years of what people were doing, like tallying the machine votes, not writing in the registered write-in person's name on the tally sheet, and yeah, this is just where that is. I lost my place on here too.
No, we're good.
We're good, but you guys can look that up later, because one of us is getting tired, so.
Some of us have a long day. Are there any questions?
I just have one,
Yeah.
it's so bad. So how do they get the app? Like, do we send their envelopes out? So once they register as an absentee voter.
Yeah.
We send this with the ballots inside.
Yeah, no, so here, hand me that over an envelope. This is I mean, it's a whole process, and it is really helpful to have somebody explain it. to
Take
you.
some ballots over there.
So we
That's
don't
right, type.
send it unless they register as an absentee.
When they don't register, they request an absentee ballot.
Yeah, so
We have to have
they're
their ID.
registered to vote. So first of all, in the absentee packet that come at the beginning of the whole cycle, there's going to be a list of your registered voters.
Okay,
And sometimes people will be registering to vote and requesting an absentee ballot at the same time. Hopefully they're doing it online. We are going to have, from Marine, we're gonna have these envelopes, we're gonna have the little envelopes.
okay.
We're gonna have the ballots that we have counted and of how many we have in our packet, and put that down on the front where it told us to. Yep, definitely. And we're going to have the absentee ballot voting instructions.
Okay.
When I always put everything together, so I remember this has to be the voter's name. Oh, it used to say that really spelled out clearly. Oh, dang it. They
That's
have
what- I was gonna ask if we can pre-fill this out then.
Yeah, so this one is gonna have the clerk's address because it's being mailed back to the clerk. This one, we're filling it up, send it to the voter, and the clerk's address is getting Ida stamped, so that's why I'm making the stamping motion. And then inside, and everything will have its postage on it because it should not cost anyone anything to cast a ballot in this country. So then I always like to put the instructions first, so hopefully it's the first thing they see.
This is what's gonna go in the
That's what's going in the mail to them.
Yeah.
This is inside there, and it's gonna come back through the mail to me. And then I've signed,
She's initial for
I've
Tammy.
initialed, yep, I've initialed my ballots.
I like to fold them the way I want to get them back.
Exactly, you wanna make them look the way that they should look when they come back to you.
So I'm not looking at when they're open, I'm not looking at what they voted, I'm looking at the initials.
And when we get the August,
Go in there, and then the instructions that say, this is how you do it.
yeah, and that will go in there too. Now, in August, we have the partisan primary where we have the ballots for the Democrats, the ballots for the Republicans, and oh God, and the ballots for the Constitutional Party or whoever the heck. And we have to send them all of those because we have no idea who they want to vote for. And then we have to remember to put an extra stamp on the end. Because it's way.
When I send out the absentee kits, I will tell you, it's gonna take this much postage, and I'll go and
Weigh it.
Okay,
Yeah,
say this is how much it's gonna cost you guys to send it out. It won't cost that much to send back, because for the primaries, if you remember, it's a big sheet and it's like 5 of them stapled together, they have to rip off the one they want to vote on and just send that one back.
yeah.
Hopefully, that's if they read their instructions. that's
Yeah, and those ones, hopefully it's still true, you can fold them in half sideways and have them fit in there nicely, because getting all those folded in trifold is not really a thing.
Yeah, you can fold them the other way too.
Yeah, you know, anyway, so that's the real quick how to send them out, but I also just wanna say, if you have questions, we are all here to help, for real.
Yep, you just call up one of us from that part of the world and say, I want to work on absentee ballots this afternoon. Come by for a couple minutes, just because I'm not comfortable yet, and then just show me, and then. And
Yeah.
but we'd rather do that than get a call from the state going, what's this person doing?
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, the very first absentee ballots, I came on as the deputy clerk, and I had 2 absentee ballots for the February election of 2020. And then I became the clerk. And then it was April of 2020, and I had, I don't even remember, like 60 absentee ballots. And it took me half an hour to issue an absentee ballot when I had 2 of them, and I was like, oh, that's not feasible, I'm gonna have to speed this process up. So, you know, you learn. And then everyone had the process.
Now, if you have questions after we're done here, or like next week, you go, wait a minute, did I hear that right?
Yeah,
Let us know.
that is not great.
Martha's happy to answer questions.
Get myself a reputation. Any other questions, any other comments, feedback? Horror stories? Words of discretion, I think we pretty much.
I guess class is dismissed.
Oh, may we never have another pandemic.
Yeah, well, and it's pretty like, and people coming, they could barely hold their head. And people, you know, and I know that you have curbside voters